One the Death Squad's final survivor, the fearless Kang Hansu, has returned to the dark past as demanded. Nearby, terrified civilians are losing their minds. They have no clue where they are, but everyone desperately wants to go back. A furious guy grabs his neighbor by the collar, screaming to be released this very second. Meanwhile, Kang Hansu expects this chaos. Of course, they're panicking. They just dropped in. They stand in an entirely different world. His birth year was incredibly unique. Starting with exactly 100 people, then that number exploded and things spiraled out of control. Now our hero stands frozen, remembering a heavy, painful memory that left a massive, permanent scar on his heart. He remembers a bizarre, terrifying event unfolding right in front of his eyes. Soon, panic spreads and people run. Suddenly, a massive rift tears through a solid brick wall, exposing a mysterious and highly unstable blue energy. He was also swallowed up by a strange, overwhelming force right when he turned 20. A security alert pops up on his phone as it slips from his hand and shatters onto the pavement below. This strange world devours other dimensions, sitting at the core of the abyss, and those who arrived first gained incredible power and fought like mad, but the horrific monsters made this place a living, breathing nightmare, and their gruesome forms were too terrifying to even look at directly. It was a lawless hellhole where anyone too weak to fight the corruption got dragged down. Once the abyss completely devours everything here, the final gateway to that dark, terrifying abyss will swing wide open. Then, a massive and brutal, bloody war will break out against an endless army of monsters. Kang Hansu knows he has exactly 5 years to build his strength and prepare for the slaughter. Right now, he steps forward calmly as he keeps his mind focused on the critical mission that brought him back. All his hard-earned skills and immense godlike power are completely gone. Now he has to rebuild everything from scratch. Staring up at the dark, gray sky, he tells himself that no matter what, the first threat should appear soon. Panic explodes among the crowd as a massive crack splits the heavens open. The head of a bizarre monster slowly starts pushing through the narrow tier, throwing everyone into absolute hysteria. Within seconds, the creature breaks free and dives straight toward the helpless crowd below. This is going to be wild. The panicked crowd freezes as a winged, yellow-horned beast suddenly appears. At first, this bizarre little creature tries to intimidate the survivors, but they just stare back in complete confusion. Then the beast suddenly salutes and politely introduces himself as their helpful fairy guide here to give them a quick briefing. The stunned crowd cannot process this, standing speechless as they realize this strange creature can actually speak. The guide chuckles warmly and tells them to pay close attention to his instructions for survival, but the cold-blooded Kang Hansu already knows that it is all a trap, and this warning is far from harmless. He knows it is actually a sick trick to force everyone to turn and kill each other, but these naive people have no idea yet. He welcomes the crowd to this bizarre new world, promising them that an incredible opportunity is about to be granted. Suddenly, a terrified man shrieks in panic and demands to know what other world he is talking about, begging to go home right now. The creature just grins, showing off sharp yellow teeth, telling him to wait patiently. He warns the man to stay back until the explanation ends. The guy freezes in terror. The sudden shift in the monster's voice is chilling. Yellowtooth then announces that absolute infinite freedom has been granted to everyone here. Letting out a creepy laugh, he asks if they ever dreamed of a world with 0 rules, but that is just the beginning. He confidently promises that every single physical limit holding them down will soon vanish. No more heavy physical limits. The beast guarantees they will vanish completely. Depending on their actions, they can grow endlessly strong, like direct movie protagonists. As he speaks, Yellowtooth imagines legendary warriors with absolutely 0 fear in their eyes. Grinning wildly, the beast says this is their chance to become whatever they dream of. He keeps rambling, calling this their ultimate chance to be whoever they want. Is that not wonderful, he asks, before offering to demonstrate. Snapping his fingers sharply, he shows them exactly how it works. A strange, dark magic shoots toward the terrified man who dared to interrupt him. The poor guy is completely baffled, powerless to resist whatever spell is hitting him. Before anyone can react, his blood suddenly sprays across the cold stone floor. The horrific sight leaves the rest of the crowd completely frozen in sheer shock. Within seconds, the man bleeds out entirely, collapsing onto the ground, lifeless. He bleeds out in seconds, collapsing straight onto the cold floor. Total panic erupts among the crowd, while the horned demon simply smiles. He mockingly apologizes, casually explaining that he detests noisy, loud people. Fearing for their lives, people start scattering in all directions to escape him. They realize death is waiting for them, but Yellowtooth is not letting anyone go. He snaps his clawed fingers once more, bringing another wave of pure dread. Suddenly, the demon teleports directly in front of a young girl, crying in terror. She is totally helpless, frozen with fear, while the monstrous creature looms over her. Raising his voice, Yellowtooth warns them again that he despises noise with all his soul. He asks if the survivors will finally try their best to save themselves now. Yellowtooth laughs, calling their sudden silence cute, and says he can finally resume. Happily noting the silence, the beast decides to continue his explanation. A special magic item is presented to the shivering crowd next. They can do nothing but watch, shaking with absolute dread. Demon explains that he has summoned a rune earned only by killing creatures. He mentions there are 8 other similar types, though their appearance is random. While this summon rune starts colorless, pushing limits will unlock much stronger tiers. He claims that anyone who works hard and grows can obtain superior, glowing runes. Holding up the shiny object, the beast explains it boosts the owner's raw strength. Smugly looking at the crowd, the beast asks who wants it. Honestly, who would even risk touching that thing after what just happened? But then a hand suddenly shoots up from the back. It is Kang Han-soo. Stunning everyone with his absolute calm, the kid begins to think. It has been quite a while since he last used runes, making him pretty curious. Feeling slightly perplexed, the horned beast held out the precious object, not expecting to find anyone this brave. He actually admired the young man's guts. Even if Kang Han-soo was just being spiteful, the polite monster smiled and gestured for him to hold out his hand. The guy stood completely still, showing zero emotion. Within seconds, the rune floated right over Kang Han-soo's open palm. The guide explained that these valuable items can rewrite natural law. Hovering off to the side, the creature noted that previously the hero's physical limit was only 117 kilograms. Now, it had jumped to over 122 kilograms and 300 grams, but that was not all. Seeing his completely blank face, the beast realized this was not the reaction he wanted. The kid just looked bored listening to things he already knew. The guide explained that runes have various effects, depending on their type, packed with powers that human science cannot explain. Then Yellowtooth decided to show off this power once again, asking the terrified crowd if anyone wanted to test it out. Still, the horned monster reminded them that no rune is useless and to grow strong. They had to gather as many as possible. Finally, he gave a warning. You only do this if you want to stay alive. The panicked crowd understood exactly how bad things were, meaning they had to act immediately. Everyone charged forward at once, trampling each other to be the first to grab the precious rune. Pure greed turned them against each other. While the fairy helper just laughed, watching the chaos unfold, suddenly one excited guy managed to snatch up the rune, yelling out that he did it. He finally held the power, feeling a sudden wave of relief. The monster, however, pointed out that since they already figured out how it works, they did not need any more explanations, so he was taking the rest back, instantly crushing all hope left in the eyes of the desperate crowd. The creature hovered over to Kang Han-soo, explaining that by touching your right ear, you can view your current inventory. Our hero quickly tested it out. Seeing this, everyone else began touching their ears to check. Completely shocked to see digital screens appear right before them, the helper mentioned that average human stats sit at 10, and that is really all they need to know for now. Our hero's strength just went up by 1. And if he hunts more monsters, stats like mana and magic will also increase. Best of all, runes drop from absolutely anywhere. You simply have to kill any living thing, and it does not matter who the newcomers hunt down. Sure, the starting conditions might seem a bit unfair, but the guide pointed out life was already unfair back on Earth before they got summoned here. Still, he offered them a small parting gift to put a smile on their faces and lift their gloomy spirits. Then the hideous yellow-toothed creature asked everyone present to completely forget their pasts, which sounded incredibly ominous. Suddenly, sharp daggers materialized in their hands as the guide told them to enjoy their new lives. He added that once he leaves, the real training begins, which absolutely terrified the humans who were not ready. In that exact moment, a massive horde. A massive horde of monsters appears. They are ready for a brutal bloodbath. They want blood, and they are going to get it. A drooling beast rushes ahead of the pack, lunging at the terrified recruits. It is a total disaster. Within minutes, 3 young guys are brutally slaughtered. They were simply too terrified and confused to even fight back. "Is this really training?" one kid asks in a trembling voice. But there is no time to cry. Another wave of monsters suddenly appears. A fresh crowd of bloodthirsty beasts is heading straight for them. The terrified recruits are completely frozen, barely able to even stand up. Leading the charge is a green, pointy-eared goblin wearing a rough cloth mask. This beast glares fiercely at his targets. He is completely sizing them up. Honestly, not a single human here looks ready for a real fight. They are absolutely terrified out of their minds, holding onto basic daggers with shaking hands. Things are escalating fast. Pure panic is spreading like wildfire. Suddenly, one girl raises her hand, begging everyone to stay calm. She desperately tells them to stop panicking and to just start backing away slowly. The crowd slowly retreats, keeping their eyes locked on the terrifying beasts. Meanwhile, Kang Han-soo doesn't show any fear. He is totally calm. He only silently scans the area, watching his terrified and trembling comrades. Suddenly, 2 guys bump into each other, instantly putting them on high alert. One asks what the other is doing, and the stubbly man points forward. He warns him that there is something weird blocking their path ahead. Panic spikes. They are completely trapped inside an invisible barrier. The guy in a red hat starts frantically pounding on the wall. He screams at the top of his lungs, demanding to be let out right now. But the hard wall does not budge, and things are getting incredibly desperate now. There is absolutely no way to escape, and then it gets worse. The walls actually start shrinking around them, closing in from all sides. The guy in the hat points it out, leaving everyone sweating in pure silent terror. Suddenly, loud, inhuman shrieks echo from the horde of goblins. The vile little monsters are ready to pounce and end them all. They want to quickly finish off the humans and take all the glory. Their faces twist in rage as their deafening screams fill the air. No backing down, the guy in the red hat grips his dagger with both hands. He vows he won't die like a coward and will fight to the end. But then he gasps, seeing someone walk right through the blue wall. He is completely shocked. How did his ally do that so easily? The confused guy scratches his head and says he just walked right through. Meanwhile, another guy spots something incredibly odd on the scoreboard overhead. The overhead digital display has suddenly dropped down to 49 people. The guy in the red hat happily realizes he can pass through too. This brings some relief, but the ticking counter quickly drops again. Now only 48 people are shown, remaining inside the area. Is 50 the limit? A discouraged voice asks if that is the case. In absolute panic, everyone starts charging toward the wall, desperate to escape. In this absolute meat grinder, everyone's survival instincts kicked in hard. But Kang Han-soo just kept his distance, not even looking back. He figured this crowd was totally useless, despite there being a whole 100 of them who could easily band together and fight. During his last run here, about 40 people died to those goblins, and only 10 of those trapped behind the wall actually survived. The cold-blooded teen knew this run had to be completely different. He had to make a move, quietly drawing his combat knife. He decided to clear this starting zone before moving to the next level. Meanwhile, the goblins weren't just standing around, they charged in waves. They ambushed one of the students, catching the poor guy completely off guard. He shrieked in terror, begging for help, when suddenly blood sprayed everywhere. But it wasn't the screaming kid who took the fatal hit. Nasty Goblin fell dead instead, saved by a very familiar face. Kang Han-soo stepped in, easily taking down the threat while staying alert. Another long-eared beast lunged forward with a wooden club. But our agile fighter slipped past the blow with zero effort. He caught the monster's arm and twisted the wrist hard, completely stripping the beast of its strength to fight back. Goblin coughed up thick blood, completely losing any will to fight. Our fighter ruthlessly tossed the limp body aside, shocking the onlookers. He quietly gripped his dagger, remaining hyper-focused on the battlefield. The stunned onlookers watched him, with their jaws on the floor. To be honest, nobody expected this kind of insane combat power from him. Kang Han-soo didn't care about the attention, only catching his breath. Chance to catch his breath, at his feet lay the cold bodies of those slain beasts, while he quietly stared at the barrier. His body felt exactly like it did decades ago, which was incredibly weird and uncomfortable. He kept breathing heavily, resting one hand on the ground. Crouching down, he checked the holographic screen floating before him. He got pretty lucky. His agility stat went up by 0.1. That extra point meant serious speed. It altered his perception, boosting his reaction time immensely. With this boost, he realized he could move just a bit faster. But wait, out of nowhere, a remaining goblin flings a dagger right at him. The sneaky beast was desperately hoping to catch him off guard. This didn't panic Kang Han-soo at all. His blue eyes lit up. Ready to keep fighting, with zero effort, he dodged the blade. He caught his own reflection in the shining steel as it passed. He gripped his own combat knife, preparing to throw it back with precision. A split second later, his blade slammed straight into the forehead of the target before the monster could even blink. The surviving monsters froze in shock, terrified of this mere kid. But rage quickly took over, and they charged him together, rushing forward, desperate to avenge their fallen allies as quickly as possible. From every angle, they prepped to strike the monster with pure, unfiltered rage written all over their faces. As the calm Kang Han-soo expected, the moment those beasts smell blood, they instantly lose their minds. Right then, he grips his dagger tight, ready to move with absolute lethal precision. Within just a few seconds, and three monsters are completely shattered. They cannot even breathe. The fighter sweeps his cold blade across, leaving them absolutely zero hope of surviving. Suddenly, a glowing rune from one goblin shoots out as the creature shrieks in absolute, agonizing pain. Our hero spots it instantly and snatches the flying object out of the air, pure ice in his veins. He squeezes the rare prize tight in his palm. Nearby, the stunned onlookers mumble, wondering if he really intends to claim everything alone. And honestly, who wouldn't be inspired by that kind of madness? They turn around and charge straight into the monster horde. The beasts suddenly lose all their bravado, instantly realizing that a wave of angry humans is crashing down, but they will not run. They stand their ground, desperately trying to fight back despite the overwhelming pressure. Calmly, Kang Han-soo notes to himself that there is no real reason to rush things so early in the game. Suddenly, our hero hears a blade slicing the air behind him and spins around to face a goblin. The sneaky beast raises its weapon, parrying the blow while warning himself that losing focus now is a fatal mistake. With one swift slash, the terrified creature is sent flying back, though it clearly expected a much easier fight. Honestly, in this area alone, countless people have been abducted, and across the entire planet. The true scale is completely off the charts. The clueless rookies who end up here only get safety for their first 3 months. But once those first 3 months of safety expire, these fighters are thrown straight into the meat grinder against veterans with 2 or 3 years of experience. Still, the relentless Kang Han-soo sees this as a golden opportunity to milk dry. Taking down another goblin, our hero secures yet another precious stat-boosting rune, gripping the glowing stones tightly in his fist. He tells himself that this is his ticket to gaining more raw power. The exact thing he wants. Pure, raw power floods his veins. The fighter sinks deeper into his calculations. Soon, a mountain of bloodied corpses litters the floor, and the young hunter realizes that Chaldean made the perfect call sending him here. Around him, the survivors stand frozen, completely unable to process the absolute slaughter they are witnessing. It seems utterly impossible that a single guy could wipe out a whole pack of highly dangerous monsters entirely on his own. Dead beasts cover the bloody dirt surrounded by the useless weapons they never got to land a clean hit with. Right in the center of this carnage stands a perfectly calm Kang Han-soo, leaving everyone absolutely speechless. Showing off his raw potential, slain men lay at his feet, guys who simply couldn't stand up for themselves and froze during the chaotic clash. The blue-eyed warrior quietly wiped the blood from his face, a total monster in the eyes of the survivors. Suddenly, a grinning assistant showed up to praise the young fighter's incredible performance. He chuckled, noting how hard everyone had struggled to survive this brutal ordeal. And hey, quite a few survivors actually made it. This yellow-toothed guy's words sent a cold shiver through the crowd, who saw him as a literal devil playing with human lives. Smiling, the demon declared they finally knew how to Stay alive, and then he deactivated the glowing blue barrier. He added that. They just had to keep pushing forward while he handled other business in different sectors. With a brief wish, he vanished. Panic instantly erupted, total chaos. But the stone-faced Kang Han-soo ignored the chaos, reaching up to tap his right ear. He pulled up the digital menu. Quietly, he realized things weren't so bad. The results for a basic training run were actually pretty solid, even though he hadn't unlocked many new skills during the fight. Still, he did find something highly unusual and incredibly powerful hidden right inside the zone. The system described it as a legendary sword, gifted as a token of care. Staring at it, he knew his absolute first priority was to find a path to rapid growth. He wondered what his old allies, like Era's Kang T and Chaldean, would do if they were in this spot. A memory flashed back, sharing drinks with a buddy who asked about hidden dungeons. The concept was completely foreign to the always serious Kang Han-soo back then. His blonde companion leaned in to explain that a high-difficulty dungeon was secretly tucked away in the training camp, admitting he couldn't beat it. Honestly, no one had ever cleared it, he said, clinking his wooden mug against Kang's. Kang Han-soo asked if the guy only made it halfway, yet still grew. Incredibly powerful, grinning with absolute pride, the blonde fighter nodded. Exactly. He claimed, boasting that it was the only reason he became a Valkyrie. If he could go back now, he would surely conquer that hidden zone and finally defeat Kang Han-soo. One thing was clear, absolutely crystal clear. The higher the difficulty and danger, the more insane the rewards. Recalling those words, the determined hero fixed his sights on his next destination. He knew his path, the target was chosen. Take care of a few things first. Here is where it gets interesting. The opening stage of training brings 100 people together to cooperate. Initially, everyone starts in a completely safe, shielded zone, but that comfort does not last. Soon the barrier drops, time to face reality. With players who arrived earlier, to unlock the hidden dungeon Kang Han-soo needs to secure 2 hidden pieces. First, to trigger his rapid power spike. He sets off to locate the nearest piece, scanning his immediate surroundings. Right away, the young warrior spots a heated argument breaking out nearby. The girl is firmly telling a guy that they are not going anywhere. With strangers, it looks like petty conflicts are already starting to spark everywhere. Without warning, he strikes. He grabs the girl's wrist. With a sly, predatory grin, he corners her. Things turn dark. With a creepy smile, the guy insists they must all work together to survive. He corners a terrified woman. Do you want to stay alive and unharmed? Zero time. Kang Han-soo has absolutely no room for this petty drama. Within 1 week, he must locate the hidden zone, or it is gone. Suddenly, a guy approaches from behind and spells our hero's name perfectly. Our protagonist does not show even a single drop of emotion. The dirty, deadpan classmate asks if they really do not know each other. It sounds bizarre, the bewildered kid with the white headphones around his neck cannot believe our guy is asking such a question. Another fighter immediately jumps in, shouting at him. He demands to know if Kang Han-soo has completely lost his mind. Our hero is totally lost. How do they even know his name? And yet they claim this with absolute, complete confidence. Suddenly, a memory sparks as he looks back at their furious, angry faces. These are his old college classmates, demanding to know if he is even listening. They had actually started this entire nightmare together, but they died pretty early on. Since they died so fast, our guy completely forgot they even existed. Meanwhile, the panicked girl rips her wrist out of the thug's grip. She snaps she is staying with the other boys instead of him. Standing nearby, Kang Han-soo watches the beautiful Yu-min-hee struggle. He knows a gorgeous girl like her will only attract constant trouble here. The other classmates whisper, leaving the arrogant gang leader totally ignored. Furious, the loudmouth demands how they dare to completely ignore his presence. Kang Han-soo simply continues to ignore the screaming guy in the suit. But wait, look at the thug's sweat as a terrible realization hits him. This is the monster who wiped out a whole pack of goblins alone. The thug whispers to his ally, realizing they can win if they attack now. Since he looks exhausted, they actually stand a pretty decent chance. Without waiting, the cocky leader shouts a challenge at our resting protagonist. Bandit mockingly sneers, asking who this weak, shabby-looking kid even is. In his current state, he doubts our hero can even stand up. The bully issues a cold warning, get over here right now. Kang Han-soo sighs, thinking there is trash like this in every world. But trash like this does not scare him at all. Slowly exhaling, he walks straight toward the gang. He calmly remarks that they are just overexcited after surviving one easy fight. They have no idea what kind of absolute monster they are messing with. The illusion of easy victory has made them incredibly foolish and weak. Our protagonist's terrifying presence completely freezes the leader in his tracks. Kang Han-soo places a heavy hand on his shoulder, whispering a threat. With a sudden, swift motion, he roughly shoves the insolent man back. This simple gesture instantly sends the thug into a boiling rage. His face turns red as he screams at the brat who dared humiliate him. But Kang Han-soo hates wasting time on useless trash and draws his dagger. He points the blade, coldly asking the screaming idiot if he has any last words. A guy in a business suit suddenly emerges from the crowd, telling the young fighter to relax. This bulky guard claims they are not bad, shocking everyone else. Stunned to see their boss, the giant suggests that Kang Han-soo should just tag along with them, pointing out that given their current situation, they will all need some work to do. Still totally calm, the leader asks if it is not better to get organized during such a desperate crisis. Keeping his head perfectly cool, the young warrior stares straight into the eyes of the man standing before him, spotting something very unsettling inside them. He can tell this bulky leader has already adapted to this harsh world. No intention of hiding his dangerous aura, the scruffy boss is behaving like a wild hyena. In its natural territory, destined to eventually turn into a ruthless criminal, grip tightening. On his dagger, the fighter wonders if he should put this guy down right. Now, as Ares once said, there is really no reason for completely mindless slaughter, but you should never pity the human parasites who will only plague humanity during the Great War. The boy remembers the advice of his female companion from their very last meeting, when she told him not to turn away people he meets and to protect them. In his mind, he admits that Ares has saved countless lives and is undoubtedly a deeply generous soul, but he simply does not have the time to look after every survivor. Right now, besides, those people always have destroying themselves eventually anyway. Suddenly, Kang Han-soo turns on his heel and starts walking away, coldly telling them to get lost, which instantly enrages one of the taller men, who screams, making the youngster halt. The remarkably calm boss quickly tells his hot-headed subordinate to back down, but the thug refuses to listen. He steps forward heavily, ordering Sanho to beat the living daylights out of this kid because they need to focus on their main objective. They want to establish total control over this bizarre world crawling with nasty, dangerous beasts. Nearby, groups of terrified survivors are weeping in absolute despair, fully aware of the pretty horrible fate that waits them next. Furthermore, nobody has forgotten about that terrifying yellow-toothed monster, but the boss finds something appealing about this hell. He declares that the strong rule here, so why should they not seize this perfect opportunity? With those words, the massive leader turns around and tells Sanho that it is time to move out, and the subordinates do not dare to argue. The white-haired kid wonders aloud how humans can somehow be even scarier than the bloodthirsty monsters that attack them. Earlier, either way, Tison always knew Kang Han-soo was highly unusual, but he still struggles to remember if the boy was always quite this cold. Meanwhile, our hero simply wipes the dust from his face, keeping completely quiet and expressionless. The orphan boy used to sit in the corner looking incredibly grim back then, so the blonde classmate never paid much attention to him. Now, the teenager approaches the silent protagonist, demanding to know why he is acting like they are total strangers. The blue-eyed fighter remains completely unfazed, calmly explaining that he has lost his memory. Shocking his old classmate, he simply asks if that is not highly obvious. And an annoyed Tison snaps back, asking why he is talking like an old man. Meanwhile, walking nearby, Yuminhee is giggling quietly to herself, which catches our hero's attention. He feels slightly sorry for this beautiful girl who had such a bright future ahead, but here beauty is nothing but a dangerous, double-edged sword. The calm Kang Han-soo knows that if used correctly, it could be a pretty effective, powerful weapon. Hoping she would be fine, soon the group of youngsters found themselves in a pretty bizarre place, surrounded by towering, ancient stone buildings. One of the girls noted they had walked in silence without asking where they were even headed. Cute Yuminhee asked their leader for directions, and the deadpan guy simply replied they would figure it out for themselves once they arrived. Suddenly he stopped, and the cocky blonde spotted something truly mesmerizing up ahead. The young leader stopped a few steps forward, quietly reminding himself that this was his first target. You could see the cold gaze in his eyes, but his absolute confidence was impossible to miss. His first target was the subway station, holding the hidden zone he needed. It was the abandoned Gangnam Station, a ruined place where the dusty, hanging billboards were covered in thick mold. Surprised, Yuminhee turned and asked their leader why they had come to this long-abandoned subway station. Kang Hansu had no time to explain every little detail. If not for Eris' advice, he would have just gone alone. After a bit of thinking, the young man realized he had no choice but to explain. He suddenly claimed he was being guided by a strange premonition, and that losing his memories had somehow granted him massive superpowers. His wild statement completely dumbfounded the group, though Hansu wondered why they should be shocked by superpowers when they had literally just met a fairy. The anxious blonde asked Tassin if they were safe following their odd leader. The blue-eyed guy smirked slightly upon hearing this, calmly stating he was not forcing anyone to tag along. He respected their personal choices, so they were completely free to stand back and watch from afar. Tassin gritted his teeth in anger, thoroughly annoyed by the arrogant kid. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that his emotionless companion, Kang Hansu, actually knew something, yet the nervous group followed their young leader, showing zero fear. Honestly, does he even feel it? The loudmouth asked if they were headed somewhere safe, and he calmly replied they were going to meet some local friends. This got a skeptical look from the stunned kid, who couldn't fathom what kind of friends he meant. He wondered what kind of people could possibly live in a dump like this, questioning if Hansu had been here before. The young survivors slowly headed down the dark stairs, but suddenly the leader stopped, keeping his hands in his pockets. Kang Hansu ordered them to freeze, his chilling tone immediately putting everyone on high alert. He scared them half to death by suddenly drawing a crooked, razor-sharp dagger as if he sensed an immediate threat. A girl shrieked, warning Tassin to watch out. But the clueless blonde did not react in time. The cold-blooded protagonist swung his blade at the loudmouth who had been annoying him. With non-stop complaints, the terrified kid nearly lost his mind and shrieked in absolute terror. Unable to defend himself, he nearly fainted, believing he was about to be gutted, but that was not his fate. Hansu had actually plunged his dagger into a massive, disgusting, maggot-like creature crawling right beneath them. He coldly warned that this dungeon, the area, looks exactly like a subway station, where green bugs crawl out when they feel vibrations. Shaking ground wakes them up, but he says they hate the bright sun. Because they hate light, they stay inside. Then a crushed beetle drops a rune. Since he always knows his business, Kang Hansu immediately snatches the precious prize for himself. The leader terrifies everyone, warning that those drooling jaws will rip their flesh. One single bite is all it takes to rip them apart. He adds that they will pass out. After a bite, they will quickly black out and die on the spot. The arrogant rookies shake with fear, but know they must memorize every word to survive. Kang Hansu promises an easy way out. After showing them how to handle the bugs, their brutal training session immediately begins in earnest. The recruits soon massacre the vile pests without effort. Watching the 4 trainees work, the group leader notes that they might actually be useful. Perhaps they will serve as decent shields later. However, there is a 5th kid standing alone. This helpless youngster is visibly terrified, so our hero offers some advice. He tells the kid to only step on solid tiles and watch out for dirt-filled cracks. If he sees one, he should poke it with his sword while keeping his distance. Yuminhee grins. Yuminhee smiles, saying he just needs to strike the bulging ground. Another teammate quickly agrees, while the anxious kid with headphones around his neck remains frozen in fear. Staring unsurely at his blade, he creeps forward while trying to stay calm. He keeps repeating that he can do this, desperately trying to summon some courage. But as he steps onto one of the splits, the clumsy kid triggers a major trap. A giant, terrifying beetle bursts from the floor, throwing the poor kid off balance. He tumbles onto the cold ground, completely losing his mind and screaming in pure terror. Luckily, the ever-prepared Kang Hansu steps in, drawing his sharp blade to save the day. With one swift slash, the massive insect is chopped to pieces before it can strike. The rookie sits frozen on the dirt floor, staring in awe at their leader's flawless execution. He watches the leader with immense admiration. The boy eagerly thanks his savior, who now clearly knows how weak he is. Ignoring the praise, the cold-blooded leader turns and continues down the dark corridor. The quiet boy can only watch his retreating figure, knowing he is seen as a burden. In this harsh place, the timid youngster is nothing but a liability. He mentions it feels like Kang Han-soo somehow predicts every single event beforehand. The commander scoffs, asking if he had not already mentioned his special talent. Confident and proud, he claims this is his actual superpower, so everything is known up front. His bewildered companions can only nod, completely speechless. They just look at each other with their mouths wide open, utterly lost for words. He instructs them to refocus on the hunt, and they get back to business. In just a short time, a massive pile of slain beetles covers the entire stone floor. Holding another valuable rune in his hand, our hero notices his lazy comrades doing absolutely nothing. Without any emotion, he asks why they are slacking. He explains they all agreed it is best if he takes everything. In exchange, they expect him to carry and protect them just like in an online game. Smiling brightly, the girl explains that they would never become superstars on their own. There is no point in hoarding resources when they are far from being powerful. Giving everything to Kang Han-soo in exchange for ultimate protection is their best bet for survival. Fights, the serious blue-eyed boy sighed, making his disapproval completely obvious. He hated this decision. Still, the leader declared their prey belonged only to them, and if the rookies wanted to tag along, they had to obey. The absolute basic rules, decades of wandering the abyss had taught them. How to survive together, in a proper group hunt all gathered. Items get shared based on contribution and actual need, but in crisis, goodwill vanishes instantly. Anyone can betray you at any moment. A supposed ally might drive a dagger through your back just to claim the loot. And run, he knew this bitter truth all too well. Soon, these naive boys would learn just how brutal this world really is. The commander made it clear, rely on your own strength, because if you are useless, he will abandon you. This incredibly harsh reality immediately sent a massive shockwave of fear straight through the terrified girls. Hearing this, He immediately rushed over to Kang Han-soo, while the other guys hesitated. A visibly anxious Tassin looked back at the rest of the boys who stood completely paralyzed. The team leader knew they would soon adapt, making these basic, obvious explanations completely unnecessary in the near future. Soon, they would be desperately fighting over dropped runes like starving dogs. Right on cue, the battered rookies immediately began to harvest. The valuable loot drops from the carcasses of those dead monstrous insects. Suddenly, Tassin called out. He had stumbled upon a very peculiar rune. The others gathered around to inspect a highly unusual item that glowed with a completely different color, filling the blonde warrior with pride. This was the rare essence of the Acral troll tribe, promising immense power. However, taking it might provoke Kang Han-soo, who had just outlined the strict rules regarding loot. A wrong move here could end badly. Gathering his courage, the young man smiled and asked to keep it. He wanted to know if the commander would truly let him have this. To his absolute surprise, the leader gave a silent, approving nod. In truth, our protagonist knew the Acral troll essence was a fantastic starter item with massive boosts to survival stats. This highly coveted rune also features a passive hunger buff. As you grow stronger, finding food becomes trivial. Ultimately, your actual power is dictated by rune rank. Magical geniuses can easily wield hundreds of diverse, incredibly versatile elemental spells. Take Archmage Keldian, who was once an ally to Kang Han-soo. That powerful wizard managed to collect over 1,000 unique skills. But our main character was in a vastly different league. He never let himself forget his limits, keeping a completely stone-cold expression. He focused entirely on resolving his most urgent, looming crises. Suddenly, the young warrior reached toward his collection of rare summoning runes. Calmly, the squad leader extended his hand toward a specific orange glowing stone, the one linked directly to the gorgeous warrior, Ares. The moment his fingers grazed the rune, a sudden, blinding flash erupted. Out of the light stepped a beautiful woman, who instantly planted her fist right into his chest. A concerned Ares asked what took him so long. Just as she suspected, his maximum skill limit was capped at only 7, slapping her palm to her face. The girl sighed that if they had only known sooner, he could have learned much stronger abilities. Having just 7 slots was a brutal limitation for Kang Han-soo, but he possessed an incomparable hidden strength. He had the essence of the Dororo lizard, which first granted rapid regeneration and later matched Kang T's immortality art. Ares had once Nicknamed a young ally 7 stars due to his highly unique trait, this exact quirk allowed the kid to stand shoulder to shoulder with elite allies he had somehow caught up with. Despite starting a whole 20 years behind, that was the main reason he was chosen. Instead of the other 3 to travel back in time, the serious Kang was fully aware he could not afford to slip up and let his friends down. He had to be incredibly careful when picking his 7 lifetime skills. Exactly as Ares had instructed him, he also knew that if his plan worked, this whole brutal training process would feel like a casual walk-in. The park right then, Tassin decided to activate his rune. The purple crest glowed, immediately granting him the physical resistance trait. Smug and proud, the blonde kid grinned over his shiny new upgrade. Then he noticed something even better, his other basic stats on the digital scoreboard were shooting up as well. Seriously, the nerve of this guy. He silently labels Hansu an absolute idiot, thinking that he would never share such a valuable prize. Wearing a sly grin, he swore he would overtake the main character before he even realized what happened. Meanwhile, the party leader waved his hand, signaling the rest of the group that it was time to move. Tassin smirked and slung his arm around him, warning him that things were getting pretty dangerous now, so sticking together was their best bet. He glanced at Yu Minhee, remarking that the strongest should always lead the way, while she just stared back, completely confused. Kang Han-soo gave the smug kid a deadpan look, wondering if he actually considered himself a true rival. Honestly, it was almost kind of cute. Shrugging the blonde guy's arm off his shoulder, he had no intention of playing along. The group then started heading down a dark flight of stairs that gave the girls a terrible vibe. A worried Yu Minhee asked why they were going deeper, and a calm Kang replied they were taking the subway. Shocked, she asked if trains were actually running, but their serious leader simply told her she would see soon enough. Descending the steps, the young man recalled the words of an old friend, realizing the guy was never wrong. Back in the day, over cold drinks, that friend had mentioned dangerous dungeons, but his partner bragged about visiting places that were far more terrifying. Annoyed, a long-haired man nearby snapped, who dared to butt into other people's business, but the broad-shouldered guy just scoffed, saying he heard the blonde bragging about completely useless information. He slid right between Kang Han-soo and his buddy, offering to share the absolute fastest way to grow strong. They just needed to secure one crucial, highly important item hidden somewhere deep down inside the subway. The seasoned fighter had also mentioned that although the stations are laid out differently, they are basically identical up to the 3rd floor. By stepping through the portal right in the middle of the stairs and following it to the very end, you can find a train waiting. Boarding it is how you clear this stage. Kang Han-soo recalled that this train departs the following day, meaning they absolutely have to reach it before today ends. Soon enough, the group of survivors reaches the portal leading straight to their train. But stepping through, a startled Mihi realizes this is nothing like the normal Gangnam station she had visited so many times. Despite coming here all the time, the beautiful girl had never seen an entrance quite like this, completely pulsing with raw magic. Terrified, she asks Kang Han-soo if he really intends to head in without knowing what lies ahead. The fearless hero replies that he is simply following his gut instinct, and anyone who wants to turn back is free to leave at any time. Without a single second thought, a confident Tisoon speaks up, declaring he is coming along. Having no intention of stopping, a resolute Mihi says she is going too, which prompts a smug smirk to play on the blonde guy's face. Meanwhile, Kang Han-soo notices that the beautiful girl is starting to look deeply anxious. It is painfully clear to him that she understands exactly how dangerous this situation is. In fact, someone with her striking beauty is in far more danger than anyone else. That is why she is desperate to grow stronger, even if she risks ruining her perfect face. She is fiercely determined and ready for anything, which the group silently respects. The blonde girl announces that she and her boyfriend will stay behind, since nothing is stopping them from simply staying here to hunt. Then the usually timid Sangjin suddenly speaks up with surprising firmness, declaring that he wants to head down with them. The arrogant Tisoon scoffs and asks where a coward like him is going, considering how terrified he was earlier. Sweating but standing tall, the quiet guy snaps back that it is none of his business. A bold move that catches everyone off guard. He adds that his personal choices have absolutely nothing to do with a loudmouth who shoves his nose into everything. This completely infuriates Tisun, who snarls that he has heard enough from a useless trash. Kang Hansu immediately steps into the heated argument and coldly demands that Tisun shut his mouth. He then bluntly reminds them that they are running out of time, so they need to decide their path. Fuming with frustration, a thoroughly annoyed Tisun begrudgingly steps aside to do some thinking of his own, gritting his teeth in absolute rage. He cannot believe these worthless brats dared to humiliate him in front of Mihi. Stepping through the portal, Kang Hansu recalls that there are thousands of dangerous mobs in this tutorial zone, and the terrain constantly shifts. Yet some hidden rules remain completely invisible to the untrained eyes of his companions. Suddenly, the teenager wearing headphones gasps in utter shock at what lies ahead. Utterly unable to believe his eyes, though his panic doesn't move Kang Hansu at all. He frantically asks how a fully lit convenience store could possibly exist down here. Within moments, the entire squad steps inside and begins exploring the stocked shelves. They eagerly inspect the goods, the rumor that a convenience store always sits on. The subway's second floor turns out to be entirely true, and Kang Hansu wonders if this is a special reward. Meanwhile, a brooding Tisun silently glares at the He inspected a sharp knife, wondering if he should grab different weapons. Meanwhile, the group leader strolled from counter to counter, closely examining everything. He was told over a beer that this place was more like a massive supermarket. But there was literally everything a person could ever need. He reached out for a simple aluminum pot from the shelf. Yuminjai watched him closely, asking what he was doing as he set the pot down. He put it on the stove, leaving her to watch in absolute confusion. Holding up a heavy bag with mystery contents, the young man answered her. He calmly explained that he was busy cooking, leaving her completely stunned. She had no clue what was inside, but he poured the liquid into the pot. It quickly hit her. This was that nasty green worm blood from the subway. She suddenly remembered, wondering what their leader was actually up to back then. And as it turned out, he had been harvesting monster blood. Down on the subway tracks, Kang Hansu was busy squeezing the dead worms. He collected that vile, glowing green fluid into a special storage pouch. Next, the young man began skinning a goblin, knowing exactly how it reacted. It becomes highly toxic the moment it touches that nasty green worm blood. He tossed it into the pot, recalling that goblins evolved to resist this green venom. Their venom is incredibly strong, but a teammate thought the brew smelled pretty good. They asked for a taste, but Kang Hansu warned them it was straight poison. This shocked the guy, who asked why he had not warned him sooner. He forgot he had approached the boiling pot on his own. Then, Yuminjai noted that they would never think to cook such things, asking how he knew. Kang Hansu simply replied that his mind was constantly overflowing with useful knowledge. This vague answer incredibly annoyed the blonde guy standing right next to them. As he dodged questions, Kang Hansu remembered his old days training under Keldian. His master would display crucial info on the board about finding and upgrading items. The teacher always said that anyone with half a brain should understand this importance. But they absolutely could not share this critical information with anyone else. Suddenly slamming his palm onto the board, the master yelled at him to focus. He demanded that his young disciple memorize every single detail immediately, because knowing too much about the future would only speed up the world's ruin. The disciple must not play Prometheus, which Kang Hansu understood completely. Without the exact cooking times, the recipe was useless anyway. So sharing it was fine. Once the deadly mixture finished boiling, he was ready. Our clever hero carefully poured the purple liquid from the pot into a flask. He attached a spray nozzle to the bottle and lightly misted his new blade. Watching him coat the weapon, a thrilled Yuminjai made a quick request. She eagerly asked if he could share some of this incredibly useful poison. Surprisingly, he did not hesitate to agree, which instantly put a smile on her face. While she was pleased, the other guys were left completely baffled by his kindness. He calmly explained that it would cost them half a rune of strength per use. An annoyed Tassin shouted, asking why he had to be so incredibly petty. But our young businessman remained completely calm. Kang Hansu simply smiled. He replied that he could also give them the poison for free. But in the long run, that is clearly a terrible idea. Turning his back to the young rookies, he stays quiet for a moment, trying to process what was unfolding. After all, the veteran knew that one-sided relationships always crumble. They just fall apart. Meanwhile, the brown-eyed girl promises to hand over the runes later, begging him to let her at least try out. The toxic liquid, Hansu looks right into her eyes with a blank expression, realizing he can actually trust her. Handing over the vial, he warns her to be careful, warning her that if the liquid touches her skin, she will be in massive pain. Meanwhile, the blonde guy realizes that if the boss keeps this up, stealing the poison is impossible. He boldly asks if he can borrow it and pay him back with runes. Afterward, right as the kid wearing headphones steps up, Hansu instantly understands. He needs to start making other preparations so they will not run out of essential supplies out in the wild. Before long, he packs a massive bag with all the survival gear, signaling that they are finally ready, estimating the heavy load of the gear in his mind. Kang Hansu tells himself that this is more than enough. The other three declare they are ready. Wondering why their leader is staring at them so blankly, Bull questions if they are planning a vacation or trying to become monster bait. Why else would they lug around so much baggage? He strongly suggests burying everything here, because moving with that load will make them prime targets for thieves. One of the guys is stunned. He initially thought Hansu was completely clueless, but the guy is clearly far more than just a powerful warrior. This even earns deep admiration from Yumin, who starts viewing him in a brand new light. Hansu starts helping his allies hide their heavy gear to minimize future dangers, leaving Yumin lost in deep thought. Soon, she quietly begins burying her own luggage to avoid the dangerous situations their leader warned them about. She keeps thinking about how hundreds of millions of humans vanished just days ago, and yet not a single soul has been located. Shaken by this, she fully realizes that she must adapt and survive here for the rest of her days. Clenching her fists, Yumin tells herself that she refuses to die. Yet she is still young, full of energy, and she promises herself that she will do absolutely whatever it takes to secure a happy life. A sudden wave of comfort washes over her because of Hansu, knowing that they are completely safe around such a powerhouse. The stoic leader catches her faint smile but decides to ignore it. Next, the group heads out in silence, each lost in their thoughts, leaving the two boys lagging behind. An annoyed Tassin mutters that the guy acts like he is the literal center of the universe, before tossing his heavy gear onto the timid teammate and telling him to carry it. The blonde rushes forward after Hansu, eager to ask about the incredible skill he mentioned earlier. He asks if they can acquire that same broken ability. To make things much easier, our calm protagonist simply sighs and replies that it is completely doable, bringing a massive wave of relief to the guys. They asked in unison if he was speaking the truth, and a bright spark lit up her pretty eyes. The leader nodded to confirm it, making the young maiden's eyes light up even more. That confession filled the young boy with pure joy. Meanwhile, Kang Hansu suddenly recalled something crucial. An experienced warrior once told him that some of the people summoned to this foreign world developed magic powers. Keldian, however, had strongly warned him that such people were incredibly dangerous. He drilled it into him that their unnatural powers should be strictly avoided. Standing right behind him, Tassin noticed a sudden shift in the leader's expression. She wondered what was wrong with him, while the cocky kid piped up to complain. He muttered that their newly appointed leader was acting pretty damn rude. The boy then asked if the hero was still holding a grudge over their earlier argument. He got nothing but silence in return. Still, the deadpan man finally decided to give a cold reply. He muttered that he was not used to this and had already said his piece. After all, during those 5 brutal years of nonstop fighting before being sent here, everything changed. Facing endless waves of abyss beasts had slowly turned hope into pure despair. Hope had gradually withered away into dark despair, and day by day the seasoned fighter was growing far colder, more ruthless, and entirely withdrawn. He used to be much more energetic, but time has a funny way of changing things. Lost in thought, Kang Hansu realized despair had drowned out his old self. It was a bitter truth. Meanwhile, the blonde girl assumed he had taken a hard hit to the head. What was causing his bizarre behavior, she had absolutely no clue. Without his overpowered abilities, he'd never dare tease the main character. The kid was secretly planning to unlock his ultimate power-up. He wanted to get powerful, win over Minhee, and get rid of that annoying sanction. He even dreamed of bossing Kang Hansu around. Suddenly, the leader froze. He abruptly ordered everyone to halt right there, which immediately raised some red flags. A worried Tassin watched as the leader knelt to touch some strange, slimy substance. Feeling the gooey liquid, the cold-blooded warrior quickly realized something was off. Judging by the sticky texture, this definitely did not belong to a sword snail. There was no pungent, sour odor in the air, and no dry remains of prey left behind. This meant it could not be a mindless zombie either. Right then, a chilling realization hit Kang Hansu. There was only one creature this could be, his eyes locked onto a trail of thick mucus. This was without a doubt the work of a land mermaid, an incredibly vile and terrifying monster. This thirsty monster was highly skilled at setting traps to lure in unsuspecting prey. The other fighters watched silently as their experienced guide carefully analyzed the sticky substance. After a few minutes of quiet focus, the protagonist reached a definite conclusion. He was absolutely sure that these tracks belonged to a deadly land mermaid. They are terribly slow, but once they inject their paralyzing venom, the victim is done for. The monster can easily disembowel its prey in a matter of seconds. Fortunately, the shrewd protagonist already had a brilliant plan mapped out, so there was no need to panic. He slowly stood up, prompting the worried blonde to tell him to stop acting like a know-it-all. Instead, the commander told everyone to follow him, promising a truly shocking sight. He added that he was going to need their full cooperation for what was coming next. The young trio had no clue where their guide was leading them, but they still followed. Kang Hansu quietly prepared a few glass bottles with white cloth stuffed into the necks. They looked exactly like handmade Molotovs, ready to unleash a fiery hell. Pouring mystery liquid into a bottle, Kang Hansu realized they lacked gasoline. No fuel, no problem. A shocked Yu Min-hee begged him not to. She hoped he wasn't making actual weapons from standard store items. T-Sun stared at the combustible brew. Was this another cheat skill? Chuckling, he figured their overpowered guide preferred staying in this lawless world. Here, he could easily do whatever he wanted with no consequences. Instantly, the white-haired loudmouth began dreaming of his own future dominance. Inside his head, Chaldean whispered, "Just kill this annoying brat already." But Eris screamed, "No, you can't do that." Kang Hansu just sighed. Ignoring the bragging, he calmly explained their strategy to the small group. He grabbed a stick. Slowly, the leader began drawing in the sand. Pay attention, this next move needs to go off without any mistakes. First, someone throws the flammable bottle, then the rest immediately charge. He added a crucial detail: the vanguard gets first pick of precious runes. Classic T-Sun, he immediately volunteered for the front spot. He claimed a highly competent fighter like him belonged out front. Next, Kang Hansu asked for a thrower. 2 hands shot up. He told Yu Min-hee and the quiet kid with headphones to decide. The anxious kid backed down. He really didn't want to fight her. Besides, she was staring right at him with those pleading, puppy dog eyes. Tired of waiting, the leader snapped, "Fine, you both take turns." With the plan settled, the 4 fighters marched into the dark wilderness. Their long shadows trailed closely behind as they walked into the unknown. The leader calculated their distance. No turning back now, not an option. San Chen dragged behind. He only went because being abandoned was worse. Clutching the heavy bottle with shaking hands, he stared at Yu Min-hee. The guy was utterly terrified, his heart pounding in his chest. But the girl looked completely thrilled, vibration, shaking, pure excitement. Sweat slowly dripped down her face. The protagonist watched her quietly. Her eerie energy sent actual goosebumps running down San Chen's back. A perfectly calm Kang Hansu suddenly spoke up. "Opponents are coming. And now we hold our breath. The team is on full alert, waiting." The commander barked the order, "Throw the bomb toward the noise." Yu Min-hee reached for the bottle with violently trembling hands. Furious focus, she tried desperately to keep her breathing in check. Flicking her lighter, she kept repeating one line, "Don't be a burden." Confidence finally flared in her eyes. She was ready for this. With complete focus, she twisted her body and swung her arm. She threw the burning bottle, direct flight path, straight toward the sound. In the dark, the bloodthirsty mermaid froze, total shock. The monster had no idea what was coming, instant doom. Direct hit, the bottle shattered on impact, triggering a massive explosion. The vile beast burned alive, piercing screams filled the night air. It worked, Yu Min-hee cheered, but the fight wasn't over. The commander wasted no time. Attack, charge them while they are still burning. He warns everyone about the paralyzing spit before charging in. He is the first to plunge into the chaos, tearing those beastly mermaids apart with his bare hands. It leaves. Tassin is stunned, but the kid mostly worries that greedy Kang Hansu wants to hog all the loot again. That explains why he is acting so brave. The blonde guy swears he won't get outperformed, but right at That moment a mermaid targets him. The sudden threat catches him off guard. He lets out a terrified shriek, staring straight into the monster's glowing red eyes. He freezes. He desperately tries to yell the beast away. But she has zero interest in listening. She only wants to eat him alive. Finally, the kid swings his blade, knowing he almost died right there. The sliced creature crashes hard against the floor, dead. Her brief ambush backfired completely. Grinning widely, Tassin looks down and realizes his own trap worked. He brags that this venom really is quite lethal, giving him a reason to celebrate. Kang Han-soo asks the young squad if they finally appreciate his deadly gift. It was definitely worth those rare runes. Glancing at his reflection, the cocky blonde whispers that he will outrun this annoying brat in no time with this secret weapon. But the chaos is far from over. Another wave of creatures swarms forward, only to get blown to pieces by heavy explosives before they can get close. A brutal blast wave decapitates one of them. Talk about a spectacular show. Meanwhile, their ruthless leader fights fiercely alongside his crew, who are holding their own in a swamp of paralyzing threats. Relying on fire is actually a brilliant strategy. It burns them to ash. Fully trusting his skills, the main character charges forward, wielding a dull blade, not that it matters to him. He stabs another target, injecting his deadly toxins straight into her veins. Kang Han-soo is quite pleased with himself, as his crafted brew does its job. It was crafted specifically to watch them suffer like this. The monster screeches in agony. Meanwhile, that loudmouth Tassin is also wrapping up his fight, easily slaying his final slimy opponent. A greedy grin spreads across his face the second he spots two glowing runes sitting on the blood-soaked floor. The proud kid instantly snatches up his hard-earned loot, feeling absolutely invincible. He celebrated way too early. A new monster strikes, spitting a stream of toxic fluid right at his leg. It splashes his left thigh, instantly locking up his muscles. The acid melts his pants, leaving him burning with sheer embarrassment. Everyone just saw him fail. It is an absolute embarrassment. Terror grips him as a hideous, skeletal shadow starts crawling his way. A drooling creature with razor-sharp claws glares at the helpless boy. He is too terrified to breathe. With a sick grin, she creeps closer and closer, dragging herself across the floor. She slithers flat against the dirt, letting out a gut-wrenching hiss. Tassin's heart hammers wildly in his chest. He is completely paralyzed now. Utterly unable to move a muscle, shaking with pure terror, he screams for the monsters to stay away, but his cries fall on deaf ears. Terrified by the threat, the kid brandishes his dagger. He screams out for help, catching Yu-Mini attention. Extremely alarmed, the young girl acts. She reaches for her holster. No luck, she is out of Molotovs. Turning to a frozen Sanchan, she urges him to swap roles immediately. Shaking with fear, the boy frantically tries to light the mixture. Bad timing, the cheap lighter suddenly fails at the worst moment. He strikes it again, finally a spark, but then a crawling monster appears right at his feet. Pure terror, Sanchan throws the bottle straight up, dropping the lighter from his shaking hands. The cocktail crashes down. Boom, it explodes just meters from Tassin. Tassin realizes he almost died. Furious, his temper completely snaps. He screams vicious insults at the useless teammate who nearly killed him. Terrified, the helpless boy cowers, hoping the monsters ignore him. Sudden movement, a sharp blade slices right over the foul creature's head. The clean strike saves the shivering young man in the nick of time. Shocked, Sanchan stares open-mouthed, trying to catch his breath. Kang Han-soo to the rescue. The reliable leader put the monster down and orders his shaken comrades to calm down and follow the plan. Stay focused, he warns. Do that, and this mine is ours. He instructs the shaken survivors to rest and collect the dropped runes. Pick them up, every single one. It is time to recover. Still affected by the paralyzing poison, Tassin groans in pain. I almost died, he mutters, lucky to still be breathing. Looking down at his badly shredded pants, he notices something truly incredible. His wound has already healed, all thanks to his passive skill. Stamina boosts recovery, the leader notes, urging them to keep moving. Standing up, the greedy blonde stares at the massive pile, quietly grumbling to himself. Kang Han-soo is way too strict with the loot, he thinks. Then he eyes the weak Sanchan, who is gathering his share. A dark plan forms. Why not take those runes for himself? The weakling can do nothing. No one will stop him. A wicked, treacherous grin spreads across his face. The weakling is easy prey. The arrogant blonde steps forward and confronts Choi San-chan directly. "You even have a conscience," he sneers, stepping closer. Without warning, he reaches out and grabs the startled boy's throat. Tightening his grip, the vicious bully smiles at his helpless victim. He squeezes hard, completely blocking San-chan's ability to draw air. Suffocating, the poor boy is entirely helpless against the brutal Tassin. The cruel attacker laughs, enjoying every single second of the agony. San-chan gasps for breath. He struggles wildly to break the hold. Clawing at the hands on his neck, he tries to escape. Useless, Tassin mocks him, calling him a pathetic, weak failure. "You could not even throw a simple bottle," the blonde snarls. Gasping, the bruised brunette desperately tries to speak, to explain himself. But it is impossible. The choking grip is far too tight. Human, he noticed the struggle, instantly calling out for them to release him. But Tassin just sneered, calling him a lanky brat before shoving him away. Sanchin slid across the dusty floor on his back as the bully glared down. He warned him to play it smart next time and stop dragging everyone else down. Coldly, he told the kid to live a quiet life, just like his father did. Without another word, the greedy jerk reached out to snatch the valuable runes. He claimed they belonged to him, but a sharp blade suddenly sliced between them. A cold Kang Han-soo warned him that since it was not his, he would not keep them. Tassin tensed up, demanding to know how a weakling like him earned these items. He suggested they split the loot, claiming they were all doing just fine together. He angrily asked if he was wrong, glaring as his frustration boiled over. The calm main character simply replied that loot distribution must remain fair. He made it clear that the blonde had no right to steal another's survival. The kid spat curses at the situation, quietly warning the leader to think twice. He told him not to regret this choice, as Tassin turned his gaze to Sanchin. He muttered that the boy needed to start standing up for himself. Trembling, the quiet boy reached out for the rune he had rightfully earned. Human, he watched their silent leader turn and walk away, lost in thought. Feeling slightly awkward, she hesitated for a moment before catching up to him. She softly asked if they were annoying him, watching his reaction closely. She worried they were draining him, but the quiet guy shrugged it off. He replied that he would not complain about things they simply lacked skill in. Human, he then asked if he would really stick with them until the very end. She admitted it felt like Kang Han-soo might just vanish at any second. The stoic main character reminded her that they chose to follow him themselves. But since they were holding their own, she really had nothing to worry about. Human, he glanced back at him with lingering doubt, unable to find more words. Her uneasy feeling remained, but they had to focus on the newly acquired runes. Most of them boosted strength and stamina, stats that Kang Han-soo valued highly. He knew physical traits could not be ignored in a survival situation like this. Stamina and raw power were exactly what he needed to prioritize. They were crucial attributes, and he was quietly reviewing his status window. But as he checked his stats, a strange, horned creature materialized. It was their fairy assistant, appearing with an energetic burst of excitement. She cheerfully announced that the total sum of his physical stats exceeded 50. Kang Han-soo found her timing annoying, wondering why she had returned now. But a cold grin crossed his face as he realized her true purpose. The ecstatic Regastic chirped that she had certainly not misjudged his speed. Showering him with praise, the small creature said they adored hard workers. She confidently declared that she wanted to reward the most active traveler. With a grin, the fairy asked if he was curious about the gift. But an indifferent Kang Han-soo simply told her to stop stalling. Just then, Human, he raised her hand, calling this current arrangement unfair. She argued that their starting base stats were completely different from the beginning. The assistant noticed her trembling hand and replied there was no way around it. She didn't need to fear him because he wouldn't touch her, bragging a bit though. Horned Demon claimed they don't kill people just because they don't like them. But then he menacingly muttered that there were always exceptions, and she might just be one of them. Sending her into a state of shock, after a few seconds the devil chuckled and admitted he was just joking, though Human he almost had a heart attack from terror. The playful demon then said her complaints about cheating were completely pointless. Since there was nothing wrong with playing dirty, he added that she was clearly unique in her own right, but was in no hurry to change her ways to match up with everyone else. The fairy assistant then said there was no need to waste time on Useless talk since it was time to hand over Kang Han-soo's reward. He explained that the prize for breaking through a certain threshold of physical stats was a choice of 3 distinct runes. Meanwhile, our calm hero watched him in silence. Weighing the demon's words, the assistant then asked which runes the young leader wanted, offering options like agility, perception, and healing. Apparently, the healing rune could patch a hole in the stomach and neutralize deadly poisons, but Kang Han-soo knew it would be useless against a severed limb. For his green teammates, however, that healing rune was a dream item. Something they could only fantasize about. They all figured that if things turned ugly, their leader would definitely use at least one to save them. Kang Han-soo then asked the demon if he had a magic immunity rune instead, which came as quite a surprise. The fairy assistant paused to think, reviewing his inventory while keeping that same playful grin. Yellow Tooth confirmed he did, which disappointed the other rookies who were hoping to secure something for themselves. Healing was great, but magical immunity and physical defense were incredibly rare in the starting zone, unless you had absurd luck like Kang T. High stamina boosts recovery but flat damage. Resistance is a much more reliable line of defense. Eventually, our hero can learn to tank physical blows, but magical spells are a completely different beast. Checking his stats, the cautious protagonist wondered if this would keep him from getting instantly vaporized. The polite demon then announced his departure, mentioning how much he trusted their capable young leader. Suddenly, the fairy blew him a parting kiss, calling him handsome. This left the teammates wondering if they had just met a girl. Unfazed as ever, the cold-faced leader told them it was time to keep moving, but their expressions were looking quite bizarre. He asked what was wrong with them, and the flustered boys quickly insisted that nothing was wrong at all. After a short while, they pushed their way up to the 3rd floor, where they slaughtered several more land mermaids. Brushing some sweat from her forehead, a thoughtful human, he mentioned that she was feeling much better, which was a nice little victory. She then watched Kang Han-soo's movements closely, wondering if he was crafting more poison. His intricate methods were a complete shock to the girl, who observed with intense curiosity. Our hero was ruthlessly harvesting poison directly from the dead mermaids. The girl also wondered why his teammates' stats hadn't changed. She asked why his speed remained exactly the same if he had. He had gathered quite a few runes, and Han-soo casually notes how observant she is. He shows them the inside of his wrist, which is marked with strange, mysterious symbols. He explains that this is the reason. A very surprised human, he stares back. The others look closely at his hand, asking what it means. Han-soo explains that this is how you store runes. You just hold out your hand and concentrate. He tells them he knows this trick because of a special trait he has. The curious girl wonders if she should try it out too. Han-soo, however, warns them not to copy him. She immediately speaks up, asking why he would say that. First of all, it slows down your hunting, so you cannot store many runes. Second, if you die, any runes stored this way will simply drop right out. Hearing this, a worried San Shin wonders why Han-soo is even collecting them. Why take the risk? But Han-soo does not bother to explain the truth. He decides not to tell these rookies that runes are actually used as currency. They serve as money in the training area. Meanwhile, a very annoyed Tassin asks if he is looking down on them just because they are listening. The hothead keeps complaining, but Han-soo makes sure they do not get too ahead of themselves. He knows exactly how this works from his own past life experiences. These young rookies will only learn when they finally hit rock bottom. But at the same time, he knows he needs to build this team from scratch. It is going to be hard work, but he is ready. Suddenly, Han-soo asks these newbies to listen closely, catching them completely off guard. He tells them they can do whatever they want. Honestly, he does not care. They can follow him or collect runes, it is up to them, but right now, the leader needs them to pay attention. He suddenly drops his dagger. Standing there completely calm, he orders them to hand over their weapons. A confused Tassin demands to know why they should hand over their gear, especially since the leader already has his own weapon, but Han-soo remains calm. He tells them their current blades are far too crude to be useful. They are practically trash. This completely sets off the angry, white-haired Tassin. He yells out, asking what the hell Han-soo is talking about, refusing to accept this. How are they supposed to fight back unarmed? He reminds them they must fight too. He asks if Han-soo expects them to just stand around doing nothing. Are they supposed to just hide behind him during a real battle? An alarmed Yumin He and San Shin are not fighters, but they listen quietly. San Shin even agrees to hand over his weapon, which absolutely infuriates Tassen. He screams at San Shin to shut up. Hansu just watches him with a cold stare. The bully steps forward, staring directly into the eyes of a completely calm Hansu. Hansu remains perfectly composed. He asks if he heard that correctly. Is this white-haired punk actually trying to pick a fight with him? The angry kid snaps back. What does he have to be afraid of anyway? He says he always hated Hansu's smug, condescending look. Unmoved, Hansu expects the kid to back down, but realizes he is too clueless. The rookie has no idea what dangers lie downstairs, so Hansu decides to act. This is exactly where he will draw the line. He raises a thumb and offers the group two simple choices. For the first option, he will. They would leave and handle everything themselves. In the second option, though, they would just step back and watch him face all the danger alone. The protagonist stays cool, calmly saying the choice is entirely up to them. That completely stuns the other fighters, looking hesitant and totally unsure of himself. Sanshin mutters that he will just stand by. The exact same decision is made by brown-eyed Minhee. She agrees that if the commander said so, it is way too dangerous there, but the caster Teeson speaks up, saying that is exactly why. They must fight together, offering his help. He claims Kang Hansu just wants to leave his allies behind and keep all the sweet loot for himself. Demanding to know if they will really let him do that, the blonde guy does not care that Sanshin chickened out, but what really throws him off is that the girl decided to back out too. Watching this, Kang Hansu remembers how they were once friends, thinking to himself that this kid is incredibly lucky. It is not Keldian here instead. By now, that brutal archmage would have dragged them straight into a deadly zone. Shaking off those thoughts, he knows he cannot afford to waste time here. He needs to move forward and get to his destination as fast as humanly possible. Meanwhile, their leader tells them he will not stop anyone who actually wants to fight, adding that they can sort out the details later. Still, the clever Teeson is convinced that this guy knows what lies below, hence his urge to go solo. Staring down into the pitch-black abyss below, Teeson is absolutely certain that only an idiot would pass up this kind of opportunity, but very soon, blood-curdling screams echo from the depths, sending all three terrified fighters running back. A panicked Minhee screams out that she warned them it would be dangerous. While the blonde guy is practically shaking out of his boots, suddenly all three freeze dead in their tracks, confronting a terror they never expected to face. A colossal serpent with glowing red eyes looms right before the team, and it is instantly clear that this beast is on a whole different level. Teeson cannot believe that an unarmed Kang Hansu is actually preparing to fight this absolute monster alone, but our main character is fearless, staring the massive beast down with icy, unwavering calm. He does not even move. The giant serpent does not take him seriously. Ready to swallow another arrogant challenger whole, it hisses and strikes, wanting to get rid of the boy instantly. Remaining totally fearless, he plants his feet wide, chucking his heavy pack aside to maximize his mobility. This monster is incredibly ruthless, ready to fight to the end while avoiding any reckless moves. The young warrior carefully calculates the beast's next move ahead of time. He notices its odd behavior, holding back instead of just pouncing, which is highly unusual. The silent young man presses a hand against his ear, keeping his eyes locked onto the beast without making a sound. Suddenly, the massive creature unleashes a devastating energy blast straight from its jaws, aimed directly right at the teenager. The destructive beam slams into the dirt just a few steps from his feet, yet he does not even blink as the blinding energy impact hits. Massive boulders shatter into sharp fragments, blasting outward in every direction. Prepared for the worst, Kang Hansu easily withstands the blast thanks to his passive immunity to magic. That serpent was quite strong, its scales nearly impossible to penetrate with any normal blade, and its powerful sound waves carried heavy magical energy. She glared bloodthirstily at her opponent, who was no easy target either. Fighting back until the absolute end, the brave warrior kept dodging side to side. Slowly closing the gap on the monster for a surprise attack, he dashed swiftly from side to side, circling the giant snake without losing focus for even a second. The young warrior knew this was an incredibly tough enemy, but he also knew its weak points, waiting for the right second. The hyper-focused hunter swung his dagger, ready to strike a blow. Our fighter kept in mind that while the scales were quite thick, the gaps between them were vulnerable. In an instant, a devastating strike was landed right on the beast's weak point, making it shriek at full volume. From the agonizing pain, the kid left his dagger wedged deep inside the beast's hide, swiftly leaping back to execute a clean, sliding landing. His aggressive moves drove the snake completely wild, sending it lunging back at the young fighter. It unleashed another supersonic blast, which sent the poor boy flying. The massive beast glared down at him with terrifying, guttural noises, but the warrior's spirit remained unbroken. Kang Hansu quickly leaped back to his feet and gripped his sword, ready to keep fighting indefinitely, but the snake instantly fired another sonic wave that nearly shattered his mind, forcing him to clutch his head and cover his ears. A few seconds later, the dazed warrior squinted through the pain while keeping his ears covered, catching sight of the enemy's tail right in front of him. The kid was startled but didn't panic. Crack, whipping around like a giant cord, the massive tail slammed him, sending our hero flying backward like a ragdoll. Before he could even recover, Kang Hansu went airborne, desperate to brace himself and avoid major injury. Only moments later, he crashed hard into the dirt with a loud rumble and lay in the dirt for 2 minutes, trying to recover, but remaining calm. The bruised hero noticed that his reptilian foe was finally starting to feel the damage. As it turned out, the giant beast was struggling with the blades embedded in its scales, left behind from their previous exchange. Our hero earlier, he was currently in the training zone, so despite his strong defense, poison remained a deadly threat. He had only 5 blades left, and he knew throwing just 1 or 2 would do nothing. So gathering his strength, the determined warrior gripped the hilt of his blade with everything he had and charged headfirst at the snake. He wondered, why not have a little fun before the venom kicked in, dashing toward the furious monster. Meanwhile, a frantic party member heard the terrifying noises and froze in place, trying to listen more closely. The girl immediately stared into the darkness, realizing the noises came from the exact direction where her comrade was fighting right now. Terrified, she realized that Kang Hansu was out there completely alone. Would he be okay on his own? A completely emotionless Tijin turned to look at her and asked why she had suddenly frozen. He casually noted that they didn't even have a single weapon with them, so they should head back to the shop. Yu Minhee knew they had to turn back, but her anxiety lingered. She suddenly blurted out her plan, completely stunning a silent Tassin. She was going to find their captain, while Urzilla frantically tried stopping her. Urzilla was furious that the entire group had been ignoring him since they arrived. Even so, he quickly sprinted after her into the dark cavern. There was absolutely no point in wandering this deadly dungeon all alone. The worried girl ran ahead, followed closely by the 2 silent boys. They reached the battlefield, where Yu Minhee immediately looked around for their leader. She opened her mouth to ask if he was okay, and then she saw it. Her face went pale, her eyes stretching wide in pure, unadulterated horror. A massive serpent had sunk its fangs deep into Kang Hansu's arm. Yet he stood his ground firmly, refusing to let out a single scream. The bloodthirsty monster hissed in triumph, but his iron will remain totally unbroken. Yu Minhee nearly collapsed from sheer terror, but the young man remained motionless. He stared back in silent, chilling calm, his mind already moving ahead. Hansu silently admitted he had dragged this fight out way too long. This had to end. His fingers tightened hard on the sword's hilt. Watch close, he was ready to strike. In a flash, he plunged his blade straight under the monster's jaw. The beast's eyes flared a crimson red. Caught completely off guard, the giant serpent shrieked in sudden, agonizing pain. It forced its jaws open, releasing him as the clever warrior retreated. He leaped backward, leaving his cold weapon deeply embedded inside its mouth. Kang Hansu rolled to his feet instantly, entirely prepared to keep on fighting. His endless resolve drove the serpent wild, but the creature was already dying. It simply had no strength left, curling up in absolute, agonizing pain. Sure, the bite to his arm was deep, but he barely even felt it. Fortunately, his high stats ensured that he would regenerate the wound very quickly. At later stages, monsters have incredibly high resistance and self-healing abilities. Standard poisons are completely useless against these high-level beasts. Active skills also fail, but paralyzing toxins can still work wonders. It works brilliantly in early dungeon stages. He couldn't have one without it. Blood-soaked and calm, the warrior gazed down at his dead, giant prey. The beast lay completely motionless on the damp cavern floor, tongue lolling out. Several sharp daggers were left scattered across different parts of its body. The cold-blooded fighter stood quiet as the threat finally ended. Minhee rushed to his side, desperately asking if he was all right. Hansu ignored her worry entirely, only asking why they hadn't run away. She explained that she couldn't leave him behind, looking down in shame. She felt like a burden now, softly asking about his torn, bloody arm. Kang Hansu waved it off, muttering that it was just a minor scratch. It was already healing anyway. Behind them, Tassin stared at the carcass, trembling. He couldn't believe their leader had taken down this nightmare, completely alone. The blonde knew the captain was strong, but this was a different level. How could he ever hope to match a monster of a man like him? Meanwhile, Hansu knelt right beside the dead snake. He began to examine it closely, picking up the dropped rune first. A curious Mihi asked if something was wrong, but got no answer. Hansu figured that defeating such a tough monster naturally yielded a rare reward. This time it was a valuable needle snake shockwave rune. He knew it would be incredibly useful, but he still needed mana to activate it. Tisun asked if he planned to use it, but Hansu calmly declined. A person could only learn 7 skills. Hearing this, Sangjin quickly spoke up. He asked if he could have the rune, instantly annoying the blonde Tisun. With a swift elbow strike to the face, Tisun told him to back off. He snapped that a weakling like him should learn to remember his place. Rubbing his bruised cheek, Sangjin reminded Tisun of a very simple fact. Tisun already had a rune, so he had no right to claim this one. But Tisun just scoffed, asking if a coward like him could even use it. Still, Sangjin insisted he would grow stronger with this specific rune. This response infuriated Tisun, but Mihi quickly stepped right between them. She wanted to prevent a fight. That was when Hansu decided to intervene. Frustrated, the seasoned warrior asked what they were doing and cut them off. His plan was to sell the rune, meaning they had to buy it. With a 5% discount, the unexpected offer completely stunned the trio. They honestly expected to get such a valuable item entirely for free. After a quiet moment, Hansu asked if they had made their decision yet. Mihi immediately stepped up, announcing that she would buy the rune. The guys clearly did not trust each other, leaving her as the only option. Earlier, Hansu saw her pocket a magic rune from the slain monster. Since she earned it herself, she really had no reason to hide it. He realized she was clever, hiding her trump cards to survive. Mihi opened her hand, revealing 3 runes of dexterity and perception. She also held 7 runes of strength and endurance. With the 5% discount, Hansu only requested 6 strength runes. They quickly finalized the trade. His fairness earned him some silent respect. Mihi thanked him repeatedly, feeling deeply grateful for his sudden kindness. Hansu calmly warned them not to get used to handouts in a place like this. Free handouts are a fast track to the grave. He made it clear that absolutely nothing in this new world comes free. Mihi silently stared at the glowing, powerful rune now in her hand. Without another word, Hansu turned around and prepared to move out. 0 time to waste. They had to move, and they had to move fast. He knew a needle snake always lurked near valuable mineral veins. That meant deposits of deuterium were close, and sure enough, he found them. He spotted the glowing crystals first and planned to take his share. Without hesitation, Hansu walked straight over to the glowing deposit. He broke off a pure deuterium crystal to inspect its quality. The others watched in complete awe. They wondered if their powerful leader was using some secret skill again. Even though the weapon looked like metal, it felt soft, leading Sangjin to guess it was just an awl or a needle, without saying a word to the guys. Our team leader pushed himself up and headed straight toward the body of the needle. Snake on the ground, completely shocking the guys by suddenly plunging. His dagger right into the gaps of the dead monster's scales. It was a bizarre sight, and Minhee and the headphone-wearing kid were dying to see what Kang Hansu would pull off next, while T-Song remained totally nonchalant about the whole thing. Before long, the snake was completely stripped of its scales, leaving its disgusting skin on the ground. T-Song asked the hero if he was brewing some new poison, but he replied that it was for something else. The scales of a needle snake are pretty tough, but they aren't great as standalone weapons. So they had to craft something new. In his head, he ran through combinations to craft weapons from the monsters and resources found in this training area. Normally, a needle has a pretty short range, making it tough to inflict extra damage like severe bleeding, but if you target an opponent's weak spot with precise pinpoint strikes, you can turn any weakness into a major advantage. Kang Hansu noticed the tip was a little blunt, but since it's homemade, he had no other option. He took a few test swings to get a feel for his new makeshift weapon and test its balance. The kid realized he needed to match that level of raw strength, making it not look so bad. Given how long it took our clever alchemist to figure out the right combinations to craft weapons from basic starting materials, it was definitely worth it. The hero needed these crucial upgrades to pierce the heavy defense of the monster he had to defeat to unlock the second hidden reward. With that in mind, our fighter began wrapping some cloth tightly around the weapon's hilt to give himself a much better grip. Admiring his work, he flashed a quick smile, thinking to himself that now it finally looked like a proper weapon. Kang Hansu noted that if they had hunted a Takoko lizard, he could have crafted a far better weapon, though this needle snake version was pretty decent too. Stunned in place, T-Song was completely speechless as he stared at the professionally crafted blade, eagerly asking to buy it in exchange for all of his available runes. Seeing how much sheer effort had gone into making it, T-Song was absolutely certain this weapon would easily outperform his own. Our team leader agreed to sell the custom weapon since T-Song wanted it so badly, but warned he couldn't craft another due to zero materials. This made T-Song pretty mad as he suddenly realized that the selfish leader had used up every single resource just for himself. Talk about selfish. He tried to reassure himself that better loot lay ahead, so he just had to stay patient. Suddenly, he realized they had reached their final, brightly lit destination. An empty subway car hummed with live electricity ahead, and to top it all off, Kang Hansu's silence suggested there would be no danger, meaning they could claim their easy reward. Their guide suddenly asked the frozen group why they were heading inside, leaving everyone utterly confused. The frustrated T-Song demanded to know what kind of dumb question that was, but the guide simply replied there was only one carriage, so they had to get off. Spotting the boys standing there, the serious leader repeats that the carriage is strictly for one person and tells them to leave, but they are in no hurry to walk away, and Tassin asks the seated leader if he made a mistake because there are clearly plenty of seats. Glancing around, the kids point out how spacious the room is for just one person. His voice tight with anger, T-Sung demands to know why. After everything they endured together, only Kang Hansu gets to make the calls. He cries out that they are the sole reason the protagonist even made it this far, while the young leader stays perfectly calm and listens to their complaints. But after hearing them out, he coldly asks if they truly believe they helped him. He knows their eagerness to grab any opportunity is pretty decent, but they completely forgot about one massive detail. They are missing the bigger picture. The system never set a rule stating he has to travel in this carriage alone. Slamming his newly conjured weapon hard against the floor, the hero explains that this entire world is defined by having absolutely no rules. The cold-blooded hero flatly states they can either leave immediately or stay to fight him, pointing his sharp blade directly at the fighters. He mockingly tells them to call a lawyer and file an official report. With a cruel smirk, the leader demands that the young men make their choice. A sweating T-Sung, with the blunt edge of the weapon pressed hard against his throat, grinds his teeth in sheer, helpless frustration. Left with no actual choice, the trio backs out and watches the carriage roll away into the dark. The white-haired kid is absolutely boiling at the arrogant jerk who just abandoned them in the subway tunnels. He wonders if Kang Hansu was truly wearing a mask this entire time. Seeing his desperate allies, the blonde guy feels certain that a 3-on-1 ambush might actually work. If they manage to take down the bastard, they get all his high-tier loot, and if they lose, they can just apologize. He decides it is worth the gamble, but then the cold-blooded monster steps back out from the train car with an eerie, quiet expression. His glowing blue eyes radiate sheer terror. Clearly, he has zero intention of holding back or showing any mercy. Tassin realizes that the terrifying leader would have slaughtered him on the spot for even flinching. Wisely, he decides against a fight and tells the others they will settle this score later. With a heavy sigh, one of them murmurs that they should not have pushed Kang Hansu so hard when he was clearly uncomfortable. Regretful, the girl agrees she never should have provoked him like that. After all, he is the one who kept them alive this whole time. She then suggests they get the hell out of here. Since wasting any more time in these subway tunnels is pointless, Tassin, however, thinks his teammates are absolute idiots destined for an early grave. They simply do not understand the burning desire to become stronger. He questions if they forgot why they even came here, and vows to achieve power far surpassing his father's wildest dreams. If piecing together all the bizarre intel on this place, several major things become clear, starting with how this train actually operates. Up to 20 stations on this grueling journey, the second fact was simple. Every station holds a random artifact, and the third meant no going back to any previous station. Kang Hansu realized that even if he survived to the very end, survival was never guaranteed. He had to be careful. He had to play this smart. After calculating, the young man figured he was currently at the 12th station. He had already gathered 8 guns along the way, decent weapons for beginners, but completely useless to him. Even that bracelet Laren found, paired with his high perception stat, only exposed monster weaknesses, but our hero already knew every single vulnerability. He did not need any of these junk items. He had his weapon. He was hoping for something else, maybe a speed or movement booster. Stepping off the wagon, he figured a mobility item would let him fight much more freely. Then he spotted a nearby chest for the first time in a while, and the stoic warrior felt a jolt of shock. Sitting on a pedestal was a pack of purple-colored Maniac Cloud cigarettes glowing slightly. Just taking one single puff boosts his physical stats, and they keep rising with every drag. Finish just one cigarette, and all of his core attributes shoot up by 20%, lasting for a full 10 minutes. Staring at that precious purple pack, the hero smirked slightly, knowing this was exactly what he needed, even if limited to this training ground. No other artifact could possibly beat this. Examining the pack closely, he whispered that it had been way too long since they last met. The sight instantly reminded him of Eris, who always nagged that every smoke made him age way too fast. Lost in those bittersweet memories, the young man looked up into empty space. Right there, he could almost see the white-haired beauty he missed so deeply, the one who always guided him. That beautiful girl scolded him, claiming cigarettes would ruin Kang Hansu, and tried to snatch them away. She warned him that smoking would ruin his handsome face. Then the vision faded, and he quietly told Eris to rest easy. These magical cigarettes were a completely different story. Heading back to the main pass, he wondered if the other 3 had already gone, since there were still 4 full days before the next hidden artifact spawned. He had to plan his next move. His first choice was simple: focus on hunting to harvest high-grade runes for the future. The second option was clearing any unfinished system quests that offered decent rewards. Glancing at the pot, he decided running a few quick errands along the way would work out fine. Although he did not know the exact rewards, he still decided to pursue the quest. He quickly recalled an assignment with a massive prize and a rapid completion time. The mission promised a legendary sage stone as a reward, which would boost his stats and instantly heal any fatal wound. A sane person would think the prize is amazing, but completing it is absolute madness. He remembered who did it. Envy Aaron, a Death Squad member, was summoned by the Abyss alongside criminals during her prison volunteer work. Kang Hansu heard that her most trusted allies had always stood by her side, but as soon as their training started, they turned on her, forcing her to unleash her powers. The mocking insults from the friends she trusted cut incredibly deep, destroying her pride. It was a huge insult. Within 7 days, everyone was dead. She went completely mad, and then this mission arrived. The broken girl quickly turned into a true, terrifying monster, her hands permanently stained with blood. The hero realized this was not for him and decided to skip it, since it conflicted with his core goal of saving as many lives as possible. Suddenly, he realized a night mission could work beautifully, offering a solid reward. That was easily his best option. The payout for the task was a massive bag of food provided by a greedy and wealthy local merchant. Our hero figured he had to finish this job and ensure his stamina stayed high, because there would be no time to rest later. Stepping into the empty shop, the young man decided his top priority was to grab some refreshments and restore his levels. Everything was a mess. Utter chaos was everywhere, as if desperate looters had completely ransacked the entire place. Kang Hansu then spotted fresh holes dug in the ground, showing the troublesome trio had recently returned not too long ago. He wondered if those fools actually had the nerve to Pull this off, especially since the moon would rise soon, stretching out his hand. The smirking guy silently wondered how brave they would actually act. But wait. The real issue was a bandit gang stealing absolutely all the valuable supplies for themselves, and nobody could stop them. Talk about bad timing. Soon the boys' group learns about the crisis, and Kirin insists they stop the thieves from taking everything. The furious girl complained that the bandits ran off the second they heard them approaching, leaving them, which left her with zero time to salvage any supplies. They even snatched all her hard-earned cash. On their way out, a highly concerned Yumai pointed out a massive problem. With their plan, Sanchin warned they were outnumbered by the thieves. Even if their stats were higher, plus Kang Hansu was still missing. Kirin muttered to Young Yo that she had never seen a coward complain so much, and his partner completely agreed with her. Kara Glask wondered how those bandits even knew where this convenience store was hidden. Believing they had plenty of time to safely loot the entire store themselves, suddenly their group of young fighters was noticed by a formal-suited gangster looking incredibly hostile. Nearby, it was the notorious Sanho, sporting a bandage on his nose, who offered them a smug grin while waving his hand, the sudden gesture completely shocked the team, though Tasin kept his composure. A flustered Kirin asked why the thug was waving at them, and the blonde man replied they were just trying to bait them. Feeling anxious, the young man insisted there was no reason to engage with such scum, suggesting they retreat from this dangerous area right now. He immediately turned on his heel and walked off, strongly urging them to search for supplies elsewhere instead of starting an unnecessary fight. Yet, couldn't help but worry, highly confused about why that idiot Sanho waved at him. Still, he felt confident. Turns out, earlier that day, a spy had quietly approached the bandits' hideout, and at first, the thugs had no idea who he was. Why he even showed up. Keeping his cool, the white-haired kid asks the group why they do not just search the subway, where plenty of food is waiting for them. The boy suggests grabbing it now before anyone else shows up and promises to show them the way. He clearly expects a fight with these guys, and let's be honest, fighting a whole crowd alone is crazy. The gang leader questions his motives, noting that the kid is trying to pit them right against Kang Hansu. Instantly, the blonde grabs him by the collar. He demands to know if the kid understands his place. Bad move. Seongho is absolutely furious. He asks if the brat realizes how much their leader has actually helped him. Then, a sudden, massive fist slams straight into his face. Down goes the stubbly thug with a crash. The henchmen are terrified. The arrogant Tassin looks down at them. He claims those three are not even worth his time, so why trap weaklings? For mere weaklings, wiping blood from his nose, Seongho struggles to get up. While groaning in pain, having the thugs completely dominated, the young boy says he will give them one shot, urging them to consider his generous proposal. Soon, the entire group gathers at a nearby house where Yu Minhai is looking out the window with absolute dread. Suddenly, she spots Kang Hansu walking down the street and calls out to him with a happy shout. She is incredibly relieved now that he is back, safe at last. Meanwhile, the sneaky blonde tells himself there is absolutely no reason to panic. Nobody knows he set this trap, and if things go bad, he can just lie. They explain that while they went back for Chisen and Yunjio, those thugs cleared out the entire store. Our main character nods, having seen them. On his way over, he turns his attention to the dining table and asks the others exactly how much food they have left. The group admits they tried to gather whatever they could find, but their haul was pretty disappointing. They barely got anything. The annoying Tishang chimes in, saying that since the powerful Kang Hansu is here, they can just take it all back, smirking. He suggests their target is too tough to fight alone and offers his assistance. Calmly, the young hero suggests they eat before discussing serious business. Gnawing on his food, the white-haired kid wonders if this guy is mocking him. Highly irritated, he points out that they are being treated like children. Yet not a single trace of emotion shows on our hero's face. Cold. The blonde chatterbox asks the silent guy if he has any shame left. He reminds him that they risked their lives for this meal, demanding to know why this freeloader will not offer anything in return. The blonde continues. If he brings something valuable to the table, he might share some food. Showing her kind nature, Yu Minhai speaks up, explaining they gathered this for everyone anyway, but Tassin cuts in, repeating that they risked their necks to secure these supplies, so giving it up for free makes 0 sense. He points out that Kang Hansu did not lift a finger during their struggle, and brings up his own warnings about expecting handouts, the crafty kid, then glances over at the silent Yang Yunxiang, who is quietly staying out. Of this argument, the white-haired troublemaker knows exactly how to play this. If he could win everyone over, this main character would not be a problem anymore. It was fascinating to see how long this cold-blooded puppet would act so stubborn. Eventually, the silent guy casually remarked it was a real shame that his food was not shared with him, showing absolutely no emotion. He then said he had absolutely nothing to offer in return, asking how they could resolve the issue instead. That is when Pester immediately chimed in, claiming that the quiet guy must have hoarded plenty of valuable loot down in the subway. Chisen looked concerned, wondering what this conversation was even about and what their leader had found down there. Chatterer chimed in, saying Hansu had just walked out of a hidden room, where he had uncovered some sweet loot, trying to put on a polite front. He began urging the guy to divide up his hard-won trophies, reminding Hansu that they still had to stick together. The kid then held out a candy bar, telling him not to make anyone do something stupid and to behave. The stern-faced Kang stared coldly at the offered snack, keeping completely silent. Talk about a tense standoff, but then their leader noted that Tassin had finally learned his lesson, but the kid told him to stop changing the subject and simply answer. Brave stood up from the table, feeling that the youngster should be a bit more subtle. But that was typical behavior for kids of his age. Absolutely no one understood him, but our hero quietly noted to himself that he only took these boys along because of Ares. He did not even care about their runes. It was solely Ares' words that brought him to this place. The white-haired guy suddenly yelled out, demanding to know where the departing man was going. The blue-eyed kid felt he had done enough and had no desire to help any further. Just then he recalled the formidable Kang Ti, who loved to threaten pest-like people with death, though our hero found such dramatic threats totally ridiculous, almost feeling embarrassed that his ally could say something so foolish. Finally, Kang Hansu told the young fighters to stay safe and preserve their strength for what was ahead, both San Shin and Hyan. He watched him leave in silence, feeling a faint pang of sadness. Chun Shin remarked they had managed just fine in the past, urging them to avoid starting drama. With a bright sparkle in her eyes, the cute girl declared that they would absolutely bring him back, asking Hyan He to tag along. Scratching the back of his head, Tassin questioned why they should even stop him. After all, he was free to go. Honestly, the kid felt zero regret about his departure, viewing him as nothing but an arrogant fool right until the very end. The white-haired man added that the brave fighter was only making a fool of himself, insisting that if they offered any free handouts, he would crawl right back. He was confident they would succeed alone, then looked at Miss Ni in total confusion. Stunned, he asked if she was really going to abandon them for that creep, leaving the young woman completely speechless. Scurrying out of the building, the worried, brown-eyed girl caught up to Kanu, pleading to go with him. Her deep eyes were full of sincerity, but the cold-hearted young man flatly refused, telling her he could not bring her along. Honey did not push it, but he suddenly asked if he had not already warned her. Instead, he drops a bombshell, telling them it is entirely their choice. They can choose to follow him on his journey or walk away. Charming's face flushes a bright deep pink, her eyes suddenly shining with pure hopeful joy. But Tassin stomps out of the building, shouting his head off in protest. He rudely barks that she cannot leave them behind. The kid snaps back, pointing out her wounds were not his doing, yet he holds her back. Sanshin, watching from inside the building, suddenly steps in to speak. He says everything is fine, shocking Shinsun, who is standing right beside him, by suddenly announcing that he is leaving with Kang Hansu and Yu Minhee. The sly bully chuckles softly, clapping a hand on the kid's shoulder and asking if he really knows what he is saying. The blonde sneers that it is impossible, and asks if he thinks his father will let this slide. Tassin sneers next, calling Sanshin a stray dog who finally dares to crawl away, and asking if the worthless brat forgot his master. An exhausted Sanshin is completely done with his arrogance, demanding to know what his father can even do. To threaten them, Sanshin points out they cannot even step outside right now, meaning the white-haired bully's father has no way of knowing a thing. The young man adds that none of it matters anymore, effectively shutting this annoying pest's mouth. Standing tall without a shred of fear, the young man declares he has absolutely no reason to obey this scoundrel ever again, and walks away, staring at his retreating back. Tassin is furious that despite all his efforts to break the boy's spirit, he still stood his ground. Enraged, the white-haired bastard screams at the departing trio that they are dead wrong. To think things will be any better out there, nursing his deep grudge. He mutters that they will crawl back sooner or later anyway. And then they will regret it. Late that afternoon, the three of them walk silently down a deserted street, lost in their own thoughts. A slightly worried Sanchin points out that their supplies are running low. But Kang Hansu is already completely distracted, a few meters away in a shop window. He spots a pretty nice jacket on a mannequin, without wasting a moment. Our main character slips on the new coat, and it fits him perfectly. This leaves his companions staring in absolute silence, completely shocked by his behavior. They really did not expect this, but the young man just shrugs it off, stating they have work to do and need to keep moving. Still, the brunette worries about their carefree leader's hidden plans. It is obvious that if Kang Hansu lands himself in serious trouble, everything goes down the drain since he is the only one strong enough. The leader himself knows exactly what is going through the mind of his worried companion, who is looking incredibly tense right now. But he finds it understandable, considering Sanchin knows absolutely nothing about the mysterious moon. Suddenly, he halts in his tracks, noting that it is almost midnight, a faint, slightly uneasy smile suddenly playing on his lips. Not quite understanding what is happening, Yu Minhee and her companion ahead of her stop and stare at their guide. A few seconds later, she looks up at the night sky, freezing in pure terror as she spots something strange. She pointed out that something was seriously wrong with the moon. Even Sanchin shivered a bit, completely unable to process the situation. The moon suddenly bloated in size, glowing with a sickening yellow light. It looked absolutely nothing like normal. Things were getting incredibly bizarre. High above, something was happening that defied logic. A giant slit tore right through the center, revealing a massive black and yellow sphere. It looked exactly like an eye, casting a creepy energy straight downward. The beam targeted the exact spot where the young fighters stood. Yu Minhee stared in absolute disbelief. She had never seen that eye open before. A deeply anxious Sanchin stood frozen, the food right in his hand suddenly crumbled into slipping sand. It was a terrifying, confusing moment. Nothing could be done. Panicking, the girl frantically grabbed her backpack. Realizing what this meant, she feared all their food had suffered the same. Sure enough, when Yu Minhee zipped it open, she gasped in horror. Her bag was filled with nothing but yellow sand. Just then, a guy in headphones noticed a strange glow nearby, though he was baffled. But soon, he realized those lights were actually glowing people in the distance. Minhee asked if they glowed too, and Sanchin guessed it was impossible to spot anyone close by but far away. They glowed brightly. What truly alarmed Minhee was that people could be seen straight through walls, practically inciting everyone to fight each other. Sanchin turned to the unbothered Kang Hansu, asking if he knew this would happen. Smirking, the hero told him to stop talking absolute nonsense. Sure, he had superpowers, but he could not predict such things. The guys did not buy it, but suddenly, furious shouting echoed nearby. A man was screaming that someone had stolen all of his supplies. All around them, glowing figures dotted the streets, but the source was unclear. People continued to argue. This situation proved how fragile this world was. Once again, it was clear that this pocket dimension was completely insignificant. No wonder their smart leader had told them not to pack much food. It turns out there is a cruel rule here when the moon rises. Whenever the moon of this specific world appears, all stored food simply turns to sand. The team leader silently walked forward. A very tense Sanchin called out, asking where on earth he was going. The mysterious guy casually replied that he was going to do what was necessary. Meanwhile, a dumbfounded Tayson shrieked about their missing rations. It was pure chaos. A highly concerned Shinsun immediately asked what they should do now and if they should forage. Youngyo pointed out that all local stores had likely been raided already. The white-haired man was absolutely convinced that the scumbag Kang knew this beforehand. Fuming, he realized the insolent jerk was playing them with his superpower. He wanted to crush them all. Just then, an alarmed girl shrieked that something incredibly bizarre was happening right outside their door. Just down the street, glowing figures walked by, clearly looking for trouble. An angry thug was already hunting for the kid who had crossed him. leaving them completely out of food, so he ordered his subordinates to find them. Tijin realized they stood zero chance, should he just run. He could slip away now, attacking once they scattered, but Chun-Shin panicked. She suggested finding the powerful Kang Han, he would surely help them. Tijin snapped in fury, asking if she had any pride left in her. Why beg that spineless jerk? Chun-Shin shrieked in total frustration. Did he honestly believe the three of them could take on this whole gang? She argued that the bandits would target Kang Han anyway, so they should offer help. It made perfect sense. Young-ho quietly chimed in, agreeing with her plan. Bandits might back down if they faced a crowd, allowing them to negotiate somehow. Tijin hated to admit it, but deep down he knew they were right. A temporary alliance with Kang Han, actually not a bad plan. Besides, the chance to put Kang Han in his debt was way too tempting to pass. He grinned and told the others that if they crept away, they would escape. The thugs wouldn't notice, but fate was about to play a pretty cruel joke. Before they could step away, Tijin tripped into a strange foot trap. He crashed hard onto the dirt, completely stunned by the snare. He was completely stuck. Grunting, he tried tearing at the magic shackles. I can't break these off, he hissed. Panicking, he looked up at them. Drag me, he begged, but his friends just froze in absolute terror. He stood there like statues. Suddenly, a cold, unfamiliar voice echoed nearby. A shadow loomed over them. It was the bandit leader, stepping forward with a grin. He told them to stay right there. He was actually looking for a little chat. Instantly, Young-ho and Chun-Shin realized they had to save themselves. They needed to run right now while they still had their heads. With a sudden burst, they bolted, leaving a screaming Tijin behind. The boss squatted down beside him, asking why he was using such nasty words. You're way too young to speak so crudely to your elders, the leader mocked. He explained that while the kid was planning, his bandits weren't just sitting around. Those magical shackles were basically ruined duct tape. Then, the boss stood up. He sighed, muttering that it was time to stop wasting breath on useless talking. Looking down coldly, he demanded to know why there were only 3 of them. Where did the rest go? Tijin kept his mouth shut, glaring. The thug simply raised his heavy boot to crush some answers out of him. Tijin screamed in pure agony as the sudden pressure shattered his resolve. He curled into a tight ball, his legs shaking violently from the brutal pain. I will tell you everything, he gasped out, completely broken. He sobbed that he knew exactly where the others had run off to. The boss smiled, but told him that someone else wanted to speak first. From the shadows stepped Sun-ho, looking for some long-awaited payback. He was eager to confront the brat who had scammed him of his food. With a twisted smirk, he promised to make Tijin suffer the exact same way. Tijin ground his teeth in rage, cursing his friends in his mind. If they hadn't run away, they could have easily crushed this weak scoundrel. But the bandit boss intervened, warning them not to go too far. They still had to deal with this guy, and they were absolutely dying for a fight. Right then, a savage crowd began stomping on the helpless kid. He could only cover his head with his hands during the brutal beating. Meanwhile, the white-haired man wondered how Chisen and Yang-yo dared abandon him. Without even blinking, their cold abandonment triggered a massive wave of rage. He quietly swore to himself that he would slaughter every single one of them. At that moment, the traders finally reached the small campsite. The 3 who left earlier were just sitting there, looking deeply confused. A strange, unappealing stew was boiling away inside a deep pot nearby. Chisen looked at them, flustered, and asked what they were doing there. Right out in the open like this, she asked if they were having a picnic. Yang-yo just stood there silently beside her as the girl quickly realized something. She realized this group knew all the food would soon spoil. Yet there they were, eating calmly anyway. She spoke up with total confidence. She said it worked perfectly and suggested they all share the meal together. As she walked to a rock to sit, Sanchin and Minhee noticed Hansu moving. He had reached for his blade, suddenly swinging it right in front of her. His expression remained cold and silent as he kept the edge close. Terrified, she struggled to find her voice, asking what he was doing. Chewing his food, the young man stared back at her with blank, emotionless eyes. Back off, he quietly warned her, while keeping his weapon raised and ready. Chisen yelled out nervously, asking why they were acting like children. She reminded them that, unlike Tessen, they had done absolutely nothing wrong. She dared to ask what would happen if they stepped closer anyway. With a smirk, our hero replied that his special ability warned against it. An angry Yang-yo snapped, asking if that stupid power told him everything. Hansu calmly answered that yes, his power told him quite a lot of things. For instance, it warned him about the massive danger they just dragged along. Hearing a new male voice praise his sharp senses, they whipped around. It turned out these brainless fugitives had brought some very unwelcome guests. A whole gang of dangerous thugs stood there, and trust me, they wanted trouble. Their scruffy boss kept back, watching the kids with a wicked smirk. The runaways froze in terror, but our protagonist kept his grip tight. His sword was ready for whatever fight was about to break loose. He stayed calm, calculating every possible move in his head. Minhee stood frozen beside him, trusting that he would handle this mess. A single drop of sweat rolled down her face as she waited. She wondered what kind of crazy trick Hansu would pull off this time. But right then, our hero was actually thinking about a rich man's food bag. That bag was the ultimate reward for completing a very specific quest. To get it, he had to cook and eat as much as possible under the moonlight. It sounded easy enough, but there was one catch: you had to be greedy. The prize went to whoever stuffed their face without sharing a single bite. Winning this delicious challenge was going to take some real effort, especially in a chaotic situation where everyone else was panicking. These guys are running around, their only goal, stealing the food supply. To survive, this greedy guy has to push past everything, just eat. Stabbing a sausage with his knife, Kang Han-soo quietly thinks to himself. The designer of this test, seriously twisted, he lifts his food. Keep a cool head, even in a complete mess like this. Pushed by desperation, a guy suddenly bursts out of the bandit crowd, instantly pulling everyone's eyes. It is a completely battered and bruised Tasin clutching his bleeding shoulder. He totally terrifies poor Chasen. Fueled by absolute raw fury, he screams at her to just shut her mouth. How dare they leave him behind, completely terrified. The poor girl can barely speak, stammering they only ran to get help. But he is not buying it. Stop talking nonsense, he demands. He knows if they had stayed, things would have ended differently. Right then, Sung-ho steps up from behind with a big smile, telling him to chill out, completely breaking the blonde guy's focus. Then a heavy hand lands on his shoulder from the gray-haired boss, who also tells him to take a deep breath. He notes that Kang Han-soo is surprisingly skilled, asking where they got this incredible meat. The chewing youngster just shrugs. Meat is everywhere, no explanation needed. The confused thugs look on, totally grossed out by the sight. Are they seriously watching him eat that? But get this, the boss is actually more worried about their extreme dehydration, even after trying it. Yet this kid eats like nothing is wrong, completely unfazed. The deadpan hero explains that boiling the meat in goblin blood fixes it. Staring at him, the boss remembers Tasin mentioning this kid has some bizarre superpowers. The white-haired leader also points out that Han-soo grabbed some highly valuable loot back at the station. The mastermind realizes today is the absolute perfect moment to strike and take it all. Sure, there is a major skill gap, but their numbers easily crush this 20-something civilian. The scruffy bandit figures the kid is used to battling monsters, but that does not mean he knows how to fight humans. They press the battered Tasin to move, but he completely freezes. Totally terrified and lost on what to do, the gray-haired leader steps in, telling him to go eat and have a little chat with his buddy. Tasin has no idea why he is taking orders from him, but he still knows it is much smarter not to act tough in this crowd. Meanwhile, Kang Han-soo stays totally relaxed, while Yu Min-hee panics. She watches his every move. The white-haired punk agrees with the boss, offering to step up and have a quiet conversation. The panicked, brown-eyed girl screams at him to stay back and not cross that line. Knowing things will get ugly, the bruised guy who hates her tells her to shut up, ignoring the warning and stepping closer. Our stone-faced hero quietly mutters that this is the end, making her nearly faint. In his mind, the young man silently begs Eris not to blame him. His cocky attitude vanished instantly. Tasin sensed something was terribly wrong. Suddenly, a quiet explosion popped. It knocked the blonde straight off his feet, leaving him utterly bewildered. Veins bulged across his forehead as he struggled to ask why they had done this to him. The very first thing he did was look down at his leg, where an agonizing pain was beginning to spread. Like wildfire, a blood-curdling shriek ripped from his throat as everyone realized that Tasin had actually lost his leg for crossing the line. The young bandit writhed on the ground while the stunned outlaws watched in dead silence, not Even knowing how to react, Chisun and Young Yo shook with sheer terror. Sweat dripping down their faces as they stared at their comrade, Yumi felt guilty. And the bleeding blonde continued to curse Kang Hansu for going this far over. A simple piece of meat, the terrified Sanshin was sweating buckets. At the absolute horror of the scene, the desperate bandit shouted that this hero mutilated someone just to keep his food, and if he grows stronger, they will be the next ones slaughtered. The white-haired outlaw screamed that this monster will kill them all for runes, so they must strike now, keeping his cool. The leader ordered his men to prepare, but a worried Sanho tried to argue, yet deep down he knew the young kid had absolutely no desire to fight them right now. But if they let him grow stronger in the future, he would wipe them out easily. The bandits gripped their weapons, knowing the bright moonlight meant their target had absolutely nowhere left to run. So they had to eliminate him right now. Everyone was sweating bullets, wondering what kind of high schooler possessed such a cold, ruthless, and terrifying gaze. The cold-blooded warrior took a slow breath, completely ready for the incoming clash. He recalled how Ares and Keldian always bickered, even after agreeing to team up. The goddess had warned him not to make enemies so casually, while the war god insisted that any foe in front of him must be crushed completely, otherwise he would be the one crushed instead. Our hero agreed with that brutal logic completely. Now he was fully prepared to take on the entire horde. Stretching his hand directly forward, the glowing skill crests on his forearm flared brightly. With a smirk, he summoned 3 runes, making the 10 outlaws wonder what kind of cheap tricks he was pulling. Furious, Songho roared that the battle had started, ordering his thugs to silence the kid. Immediately, this wild gang of misfits was fully prepared to slaughter the brat standing in their path, calmly, without a hint of fear. Kang Hansu unsheathed his sword, ready to show these fools his real power. Focusing all his senses, he braced himself to dodge and flank his targets. In a flash, he bolted forward, leaving a faint trail of energy crackling beneath his boots, launching himself directly at the bandit leader. The youth muttered that he wanted to test out his quest conditions on these weaklings. The second-in-command grew deeply anxious, struggling to track the boy's blinding speed, but as if nothing had happened, our hero casually warned them that they were about to get hurt incredibly bad. Our hero quickly readies his deadly stance, unleashing a devastating, bone-shattering uppercut a split second later. The punch launches the helpless bandit high, but he is already moving. He storms instantly toward his next target, whose face has already turned pale with absolute dread. Meanwhile, their leader stands frozen, sweating cold drops as his crew gets obliterated. Kang Hansu locks eyes with his next target, paralyzing the poor guy on the spot. The helpless bandit's eyes roll back in pure terror, while the terrified boss simply shivers. Did this kid somehow absorb all the hidden runes to gain such insane strength? The remaining thugs begin to scatter in panic, though their leader desperately screams at them. He begs them to use their sheer numbers to crush the kid, but nobody listens. Within seconds, every single one of them has completely vanished. Now only the boss remains, facing down the absolute monster before him. The old, gray-haired criminal spits out a warning, swearing he will fight to his very last breath. Our main character does not even blink, calmly walking forward with heavy, terrifying steps. The old man's tough act crumbles instantly, stammering out a desperate question as fear takes over. He asks if this kid thinks he can just end a human life and walk away. Screaming about murder, he hopes a moral lecture will somehow save his skin. It is completely useless, and the shaking leader warns him that death is not a game. Drawing his blade in a panic, the old man holds it out like a frail shield. He waits in agonizing silence, but Kang Hansu does not say a word. Suddenly, the boy lunges like a shadow, driving his weapon straight into the gut. There was never going to be any mercy for this pathetic, trembling bandit leader anyway. The boss is instantly finished. This stone-faced Kang Hansu stands over him. He watches in cold silence as the dying man collapses onto the hard ground. The criminal shudders once and goes entirely still, his brief reign of terror finally over. Our hero merely glares down at the corpse with utter disgust and zero regret. He has no sympathy for fools who choose to die because of their own sheer greed. And he is not about to let the rest of these wounded survivors walk away. Standing nearby, Chai-sun and Young Yo watch in horror at the brutal scene. The sheer, cold ruthlessness of this young fighter leaves both of them completely and utterly stunned. He methodically walks up to each groaning bandit, putting them out of their misery. Turning his cold gaze toward the young couple, he asks if they want to fight too. Petrified by the slaughter, the two realize exactly how outmatched they really are. Both instantly understand that they need to turn around and run as far as possible. They bolt into the night, while Kang Han-soo simply turns back to his business. He strolls right back to the campsite to focus on completing his own important goals, acting as if he did not just execute an entire band of ruthless criminals. He casually sits on a boulder, chewing on cooked meat like nothing happened. Watching him eat, Yu Minjai is left absolutely speechless at his incredibly bizarre appetite. He tells her she can stare all she wants, but she is not getting any. The flustered girl quickly mumbles that she is completely fine and backs away in silence. But standing next to the sanction, she cannot shake the thick smell of blood. It is deeply unsettling to rest in a campsite that was just turned into a slaughterhouse, especially with a dozen fresh corpses of slain outlaws lying only a few feet away. Overhead, the massive, creepy eye of the open moon continues its eternal, completely silent watch. Finally, as the long night ends, the disturbing cosmic eye abruptly fades away. Leaving only a tiny, faint scratch behind, the trio quickly resumed their journey. But King Han-soo suddenly felt like vomiting. He had just crammed down 2 full days of rations. Sure, our hero failed his moral missions, but the payoff was huge. He snagged a magical storage pouch that holds 5 times its actual size, easily storing 2 weeks of food. Inside its depths, the guys trailing behind them were still sweating bullets, making any conversation with their guide pretty awkward. Suddenly, Yu Minhee stopped right where she stood, gathering her courage. She finally asked him if he was truly certain that everything would be fine. The brown-eyed girl smirked, looking almost completely relaxed. She noted that Kang Han-soo had not actually killed those bandits. The young man chose to stay quiet, dodging the touchy subject entirely. After a brief pause, he flashed a smug, mocking smile, calling her a pretty terrifying woman. The annoyed girl immediately shrieked back, insisting she was only worried about him, which actually made the guy chuckle. Under his breath, honestly, those beaten bandits could not do a single thing to them anyway. Yu Minhee quickly realized she had far bigger concerns than worrying about some random thugs. But if our hero did execute them, she could harvest their runes to grow stronger. Wow, look at how fast she is adapting to this brutal world. That cold, calculated focus is exactly how survivors should think. Lost in thought, Kang Han-soo knew he could easily play that ruthless game if raw power was his only goal. But the regressor had returned to save humanity, to keep conflicts low, and to unite everyone. His absolute priority right now was establishing new rules, and rule number 1 was no murdering allies for their power. Sure, he could slaughter these weaklings for their meager runes, but that would never replace their value to the overall war effort. Enforcing these guidelines would be tough, but people obey rules when they come from the strongest fighter around. Naturally, a purge was inevitable, but there were simply too many witnesses here for him to go on a mindless killing spree. Even so, he knew that someone else would eventually discover those leftover runes and greedily snatch them up anyway. It was inevitable. Suddenly, a panicked Sangshin froze, announcing he would stay behind, while Yu Minhee stared in shock, demanding to know what he was doing. The kid explained that he just could not go any further, making this his only choice. The distressed girl demanded to know why now, but Kang Han-soo simply dismissed it. He told them he respects personal choice and would never force anyone to stay. With that, he turned and walked away without a backward glance, leaving them stunned. This cold move terrified Yu Minhee even more. Out of nowhere, he asked why she did not just follow her own hidden desires too. His chilling stare absolutely froze the girl, leaving her utterly speechless. Before she could answer, Sangshin chimed in, asking if she was afraid of Kang Han-soo, since her constant trembling made it so obvious. The startled girl stared back, her jaw dropped in silence. But then she admitted the truth. She was terrified, but something else felt worse. She vividly remembered Kang Han-soo standing over that mountain of slaughtered monsters. The young woman constantly reminded herself that she just couldn't cross his line. Since then, she made sure never to annoy or pester him unnecessarily. She wanted things normal, so the confident girl spoke up firmly. Walking away now was not an option. He would never let her back. So she vowed to stick with him until the very end, despite his stoic look. To him, her words rang entirely true. Her expression remained bold and unwavering. Watching her, the young man had to admit she possessed incredible intuition. Kang Han-soo just smiled, sliding his hands in his pockets as he walked. Yu Mani stared back at him in sheer disbelief as he walked past. He told her they could keep moving together and started down the stairs. Meanwhile, chaos lingered. On the battlefield, the heavily wounded lay scattered. Among them was Tassin, slowly waking up and cursing his useless, loudmouthed thugs. A pathetic college kid had easily beaten every single one of them. Once healed, he swore he would slaughter every last one of them. He wanted revenge. He would hunt down Kang Han-soo next. Being abandoned by everyone, especially Yu Mani, cut him deep. Raising his battered head, he suddenly spotted someone he never expected to see. San Shin, a guy he always wrote off as a total idiot, stood there. He was approaching. The quiet boy moved closer for some bizarre reason. Pointing a finger, the wounded leader demanded that San Shin lift him up. Tassin couldn't move on his own, but the hesitant boy just froze. Desperate to survive, the tense bully offered to shake hands and make peace. Surprisingly, even their gang boss was still breathing, though barely clinging to life. You can already feel the tension spiking as he reaches for the knife. Tassin ordered the quiet boy to use that knife on the old boss first. Gripping the dagger with shaking hands, the boy prepared to strike his target. The white-haired bully smiled, realizing this weakling would do his bidding. In his mind, he was already scheming how to claim the runes. He even promised to share half of his hard-earned runes with the kid. Looking up, he saw the boy standing directly over him. Seeing the sharp blade in the boy's hands, the bully's heart began to race. Before Tassin could back away, San Shin grabbed him tightly by the collar. His grip was solid and unyielding, completely pinning the trembling thug down. Panicking, Tassin demanded to know what the hell he was doing. San Shin calmly muttered that he finally understood how this world worked. He realized that letting this ruthless bully live would only bring future trouble. It was a mistake not finishing this monster off from the very start. Terrified out of his mind, the bully begged to be let go immediately. Too late, his eyes widened in horror as the realization hit. Without hesitation, the once fearful boy plunged the sharp blade deep into his chest. He gasped heavily, blood was rapidly pooling on the cold floor. Spitting curses, the dying thug couldn't accept a weakling ending him. Every breath grew shallower as his life force quickly drained onto the cold floor. San Shin coldly reminded him of his own advice to never show mercy. His turn now, time to know his place. To learn his limits, saddened, San Xian asked if Tassin enjoyed using his powerful father to bully him, but the bleeding brute only spat insults. He refused to answer. Realizing their game was over, the young fighter made his move. Young fighter let out a dark laugh, dropping his bloody knife. His opponent stumbled back, the weapon clattered heavily onto the concrete floor. The beaten blonde coward just stared in complete silence. Completely exhausted, San Xian collapsed to his knees, his mind racing with heavy thoughts. Desperate to block out the overwhelming mental agony, he suddenly bit down. Hard on his own wrist, physical pain was a welcome distraction. San Xian begged himself to get a grip. He could not let himself fall apart over something so utterly small and insignificant. The young warrior finally understood why Kang Han-soo never even pursued him. Seizing his chance, the surviving gang leader offered the kid an alliance. He claimed they would be much stronger together, but San Xian completely tuned out his desperate voice. Gripping his blade, he approached the man. How pathetic did he look? To a godlike warrior like Kang Han-soo, deep down, he knew he never wanted any cheap protection from a cold-blooded warrior who ignored him. If only he had possessed the courage to stand and fight right beside him in danger. When danger struck, things would have turned out completely different. If San Xian had grown stronger himself instead of fearing his power. He wondered if they could have stayed allies if things had gone differently. Taking in the glowing runes, his cold resolve hardened. If he was strong, the leader would never have turned him away. That was the brutal truth of his life, completely unchanged from his past. He was still walking on eggshells, just like when Tassin ruled. But now this young fighter was determined to claw his way up. If he used these fools to catch up with the overpowered protagonist, then maybe. The protagonist would look at him differently. Meanwhile, 3 massive birds of prey soared past the skyscrapers of the abandoned city, hunting for their next meal when they spotted a human target and immediately locked on. The raptors folded their wings, diving straight down at their human prey. Their target was Yu Manhwa, who stood frozen in utter confusion. But this girl was no helpless damsel, and she immediately drew in a massive chest of air to unleash a powerful, ear-splitting scream to scare the giant, bloodthirsty birds away in an instant. Her ear-splitting shriek echoed through the ruins, absolutely terrifying the predators. Stunned, the giant birds lost control and began plummeting one by one. But she could not let her guard down yet, suddenly hearing a strange noise behind her. She spun around to face the danger. Another massive raptor had snuck up on her, its beak wide open to strike. Suddenly, a swift, blinding swing of a blade cut the air. The razor-sharp strike caught the beast in mid-flight, cutting it down instantly. Right on cue, Kang Han-soo arrived to save his companion at the last second. Embarrassed, she admitted she needed his help again. She had relied on him once again, while the quiet protagonist stood there, completely unbothered by it all. Han-soo makes it clear that fighting solo and being isolated are completely different things. Handing her a share of runes, he continues his lesson. His advice is that when a skill gap exists, relying on teammates is common sense. He wants her to master the strengths and weaknesses of her skills. Yumai cannot help but admire how incredibly fair and rigorous he is with the loot. Next, she pulls up her system notification to check. And she is shocked to realize they have already been here for 3 days. She is incredibly grateful she bought those stamina recovery skills from Han-soo. Without them, surviving in this brutal and unforgiving environment would have been a nightmare. Even though Yumai desperately wanted to avoid relying on him, she has to admit. It is deeply frustrating that she is still having such a hard time contributing to their team. While she feels down about her slow progress, Han-soo pulls up his own stats. Checking his menu, he reviews his growth. He notes that both his agility and perception have finally hit 42 points. Indeed, the young man concludes that the best path is keeping all stats perfectly balanced. Suddenly, a loud and completely unexpected voice rings out. The voice asks if everyone can hear the communications check. They are ordered to return to their starting positions immediately. And the warning is dead serious: show up late and face severe punishment. An anxious Yumai immediately recognizes that voice as their ferry assistant. But Han-soo simply tells her that it is already time for them to head back. As they trek back, a heavy, suffocating silence stretches between the two of them. Uncomfortable, the poor girl nervously fidgets with her hands, not knowing what to do. She sneaks a glance at Han-soo, who looks just as completely unfazed as ever. But the young man notices her tension and says she can speak if she wants. Blushing hard from pure embarrassment, she asks anyway. She gathers her courage and asks Han-soo if he currently has a girlfriend. Almost instantly, she panics. Was that way too personal for a traveling companion? She knows she should not ask, but he seems unusually generous. So she decides to just go for it and asks him directly. Nervously playing with her hands, she realizes she actually wanted to ask something completely different. Han-soo can easily tell that she is dying of embarrassment right now. Even though she blurts it out so bluntly, the question does not stir any emotion in him. He figures someone like his classmate Kang T would love this kind of flattery. Reflecting back, he remembers how she used to be too terrified to even speak. She used to just mumble in fear whenever he was around. Thinking over her awkward question, he realizes he has not even met his girl yet. And yet, he is determined to never lose her to this world again. He simply replies that he cannot remember, leaving Yumai in stunned silence. With that, they simply continue their quiet walk. Both are lost in their own deep thoughts, surrounded by awkward silence. Soon they arrive back at the main camp, where the other players gather. Looking around, she spots many familiar faces. Seeing those familiar faces brings back a wave of memories. Yet she can sense a heavy, deeply disturbing tension in the air. Kang Han-soo remained blank as always, but then everyone turned toward the yellow-toothed fairy, who flashed her usual happy smile, asking eagerly if all the travelers had finally arrived, though she felt it was quite a shame they had gathered here so fast. The anxious crowd listened to her intense silence before she revealed she had 2 things to share. The first update was that if the group could survive for just another 72 hours, they would finally leave this awful place. The horned fairy thought this was fantastic news and called for a round of happy applause. Instead, the travelers just stared back in absolute shock. Every single person in the room wore the exact same expression. Yellow-toothed assistant frowned, asking why they were not celebrating such wonderful news. Right on cue, the crowd rolled their eyes and immediately forced out some fake cheers of joy. The horned creature smiled, thrilled to see them so happy. Next, the fairy eagerly announced it was finally time to introduce the real star of the show, loudly snapping her fingers. The nervous audience had no idea what to expect, holding their breath in suspense. This was supposed to be the highlight, but honestly, no one understood a thing. Suddenly, a massive, magical altar was revealed right in front of them. A terrified girl nearby stammered that she had never heard of this altar, while our hero standing right next to her could not care less. Heavy, ground-shaking stomps started echoing from deep inside the massive cage. It was clear some terrifying beast was locked up in there. The fairy teased that a cute little pet was waiting inside. But absolutely nobody was prepared for what actually stepped out next. When the creature was revealed, the assistant happily asked if they liked it. It was a colossal, fanged beast that looked incredibly hostile. The sheer terror of it had several travelers on the verge of fainting. Cold sweat dripped down their pale faces. The horned fairy giggled, saying, the little guy was absolutely dying to break free, slamming hard against the metal bars. She casually added that even though the altar looked quite nice, it was not nearly as sturdy as she had hoped and would likely shatter very soon. Once the cute pet broke out, she wondered how many would actually survive. Dread filled the room as they realized they might have to fight this. Smiling cheerfully, the yellow-toothed fairy happily suggested moving to their second update. This piece of news was even more wonderful in her eyes. Apparently, there was a very simple trick to put the beast to sleep. Once asleep, it would stop clawing at the walls and would not try to escape. Blowing a playful kiss, the horned assistant promised a special blessing if they guessed how. The unamused travelers remained completely silent, so she just gave away the answer. It turned out to be a shockingly simple task, she giggled. All they had to do was feed the beast 5 human sacrifices every day. Since they had to survive for 3 full days, that meant feeding the beast 3 times. Kang Hansu quickly did the math. With just over 60 survivors left, a quarter of them would be sacrificed. The yellow-toothed fairy grinned, saying the choice was entirely up to them. It was entirely up to them to take the advice, but for anyone doubting their choice. The assistant had something to show them, pointing to a digital screen. She revealed a ruthless monster ready to crush everything in its path. The beast slaughtered every single person standing in its way, who desperately screamed for help, even though they knew their cries were in vain. The bloodthirsty monster loved hearing pathetic humans beg for mercy. As it gave him absolute control over their fates, he opened his jaws wide and swallowed the helpless man whole. While no one dared to help, the assistant explained that the footage showed players from another zone trying to band together to defeat the beast. Hearing this, the panicked crowd immediately began whispering that fighting such a massive threat felt like a sick joke. Suddenly, a hand went up in the crowd, catching the relaxed assistant's eye. A deeply concerned young man wearing a red hat spoke up, asking in a trembling voice how they were supposed to choose their sacrifices. Yellow-Tooth shocked him, coldly asking why he was even directing that question to her. She suggested they could use force, draw straws, or figure it out among themselves. Then she added in a chilling tone that any method works, as long as they use living humans. She warned them they only had 1 hour to decide. After 24 hours, they would get another hour to select the next batch. The timer started ticking down from 56 minutes, and the assistant smiled, hoping they would make the right choice. But instead of keeping their heads and using their time, the terrified crowd began to panic, screaming that they were completely doomed. Watching the chaos, He turned to King Hensu with a calm smile, asking what he thought the right choice was. The completely unfazed protagonist muttered that there was no point debating, since their fate was already sealed. Nearby, the trembling kid in the red hat shrieked out, demanding an honest vote. He urged them to draw lots, claiming they could sacrifice 5 people on the first day and another 5 on the second. But a smirking stranger suddenly cut into the conversation, asking why they would ever do that. The startled crowd turned to stare in utter confusion at this newcomer, standing right next to the passive protagonist. He also grew tense as she watched him step forward. It was none other than the fearless San Shun, who flashed a chilling grin and asked why they had to play fair. The bewildered guy in the red hat demanded to know what he meant, keeping that strange, smug expression. The brunette questioned why they owed anyone any fairness when selecting who would die. Next, the frustrated kid snapped back, asking what better plan he had to offer. Right then, the mysterious warrior clad in a gray cloak paced to the side, preparing to share his ultimate strategy. With the crowd resting his hand on a nearby iron pillar, he proposed what he called the most logical method. Suddenly, with a single fluid strike, the heavy metal pole shattered, crashing down and leaving everyone utterly speechless. With a cold, unyielding stare, San Shun declared that the useless players should be sacrificed first, suggesting they pick the first 5 victims right from that group. Following a specific group of people seemed like a logical choice for the worried crowd. They all stood staring at him, completely frozen and unsure of what they should say. No one else had any ideas. The proud boy claimed he now held all the power. Now everyone would have to listen to him. He smirked, utterly pleased with himself. He really loved this newfound feeling, knowing this level of authority did not come easily. The self-proclaimed leader announced that they could not afford to waste a single second. 100 people had already vanished, but Hansu remained completely unfazed. He quietly listened to the claims that they could never beat the ones ahead of them. Sangjin even suggested that they might soon be forced to face the deadly monster. To survive, they had to band together and form a solid alliance right this second. And in this alliance, they had no room for weaklings or useless cowards. The leader then asked if it was really wrong to throw the weak ones first. He wanted to feed them to the beast, asking the silent Sangjin for his opinion. The brunette Sangjin was desperate to help Hansu, refusing to end up like his rival Tisun. He refused to become Hansu's enemy, remembering how the white-haired Tisun bullied everyone. Now was his chance to turn over a new leaf and start over. But he absolutely needed Hansu's help to survive, and he trusted his own careful judgment. He believed the hero would make the right choice, thinking his plan was absolutely flawless. Hansu admitted it was a decent plan, but offered an entirely different way to survive. If they followed him, everyone would make it out alive, without any useless sacrifices. This bold claim instantly stunned the entire crowd, including Sangjin. Since nobody understood how that was possible, the cowardly guy in the red hat panicked. He screamed that trying to fight a monster together was a stupid, suicidal plan. The videotape proved it, and he demanded to know how they could beat such a beast. How could they beat a beast that literally heals itself by devouring humans? The unfazed fighter simply smirked and asked who had told them they were even fighting. A shocked blue-eyed kid asked if Hansu planned to take the monster on alone. With a relaxed smirk on his face, Kang Hansu confirmed that his words were absolutely true. He was going to slay the terrifying beast by himself, and people immediately started whispering. Can you even blame them? Nobody believed one man could handle this beast alone. Suddenly, a heavy-set man stepped forward and yelled at him to stop talking nonsense. This was not a weak goblin, but a real, bloodthirsty beast. He shouted that if they did not clear this stage within 1 hour, they would all end up completely dead, and there was absolutely nothing they could do. With less than 1 hour left on the clock, they had to make a choice right now. Meanwhile, the silent Sangjin clenched his fist tightly in pure frustration. He quietly analyzed the situation, deciding to stay out of the argument. The frustrated kid believed he was finally catching up to Hansu, but things were different. Reality hit him quite differently, leaving everyone to wonder what was next. Had this incredibly fearless warrior really grown strong enough to defeat the beast entirely by himself? Hansu declared that he would fight the monster, but there was one problem. He could not do it immediately, which suddenly gave the brunette a spark of hope. An excited Sangjin asked if he meant they should gather all of their strongest fighters. He suggested they take on the threat together, but the fearless warrior completely shutting him down, stating that he had not even finished speaking yet. To listen to him first, the tense young warrior asked their calculating leader what he planned to do next. Meanwhile, filled with sudden hope, Yuman realized there was a real chance that Kang Hansu might take her along, but looking closely at him, she quickly brushed the thought away. Certain it would never actually happen, that was when their leader announced that gaining 30 points of strength and stamina would let him defeat any beast in a single combat. He then asked to share his plan, and everyone listened closely, but then the main character demanded everyone hand over their power-boosting runes, just like that.